Good evening. It's 5:30 PM on Wednesday, May 7th, 2025, and this regular meeting of the Sandpoint City Council is now called to order in the council chambers here at 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I'm Mayor Jeremy Grimm presiding. Also present are City Council President Deb Rule, Councilor Justin Dick, Kyle Schreiber, Pam Duquette, and Rick Howarth. Council Joe Aspiro is currently absent but plans to arrive at approximately 6 PM. Under the city's adopted code of ethics and civility, as the presiding officer, I am to identify law enforcement personnel serving as sergeant at arms for this evening's meeting. Tonight, we have Police Chief Corey Kuhn in the back. Thanks, Chief. If everyone will please stand, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need to report that the agenda was amended yesterday in order to add item number 13 under old business, appeal of denial of McGee Development Water Service application, which during the March 19th regular meeting, council voted with the appellant's concurrence to postpone this matter to May 7th. The item was inadvertently missed when we were posting the agenda for this meeting. It was caught yesterday and added. Because an amendment was made and posted less than 48 hours prior to the meeting, per Idaho code, the amended agenda cannot become effective until council votes to accept the amended agenda. At this time, I would entertain a motion to accept the amendment and proceed with the amended agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Howard, second by Dick. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Duquette?
Yes.
Counselor Dick?
Yes.
Counselor Howard?
Yes.
Counselor Rule?
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Regarding this item, just a clarification that this is not a public hearing, but an appeal hearing, which council first heard in December. Following additional information for consideration, the hearing was reopened in January, but has been postponed since that time. As the city continues to communicate and work with the appellant on this matter, the appellant and city staff have discussed and agreed that it would be desirable to further postpone to our next regular meeting, and I would like to ask if there would be any objection from council to move this item from the end of the agenda and take it up now, as it should be a very short item we can get through quickly. With no objection, I will entertain a motion to postpone the reopening of the hearing on the appeal of denial of the McGee Development Water Service application to the next regular city council meeting scheduled for May 21st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Schreiber, second by Rule. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Schreiber?
Yes.
Counselor Dick?
Yes.
Counselor Duquette?
Yes.
Counselor Howard?
Yes.
Counselor Rule?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight, in addition to a number of items on the consent calendar, we have a public hearing and discussion regarding the city's area of impact and an update and discussion on a proposed parking management plan. We'll begin with announcements and reports, and I have a couple of proclamations I'd like to share with you. But first, I'd like to take a few minutes to remember a beloved member of our community, former Sandpoint City Council member and City Clerk Helen Newton, who passed away on April 25th at the age of 83. Helen grew up and attended school in Bonner County and was a graduate of Sandpoint High School, class of 1959. She was married to Skip Newton for 63 years. Helen was Sandpoint City Clerk for 24 years, appointed by Mayor Sally Coupon on August 1st, 1981. She served under 6 mayors during her time as city clerk. Following her retirement, she ran for office and was elected to Sandpoint City Council, serving on council for one term from 2006 through 2009. She also gave of her time and volunteered for a number of local organizations. Helen was an absolute force of nature. Anyone who knew her knew how passionate she was about Sandpoint, and she was a treasure trove of historical information about our community. Some even thought she had a duplicate city hall in her basement. Even long after retirement, Helen was always generous and quick to share her recollection of how things were and how they were accomplished back in the day. Many of us in public office benefited greatly from her vast knowledge about our town and city business. I personally just remember the Newton Bogue poll. I got to work as a planning director while Helen was a elected council member. She always challenged me to be my best, and she was a friend and very supportive in my run for election for mayor. I thank Helen for all she did for me. We grieve with Helen's family as we say goodbye to one of Sandpoint's true matriarchs, and we honor her memory by following in her footsteps in our generation to endeavor to make her proud as a good and loyal steward of our community and its heritage. I'm happy to grant a few minutes to council members who knew or worked with Helen if you'd like to say a few words. Council members?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I was fortunate enough, Helen and I have gone round and round in my 3.5 years. She's always been amazing. She was always willing to listen no matter what. And I was very fortunate to get about an hour-and-a-half phone call in with her, I don't know, about 3.5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago as well, too. And we had such a wonderful phone call, and we kind of came eye to eye on several topics that we hadn't before in the past. So she will be missed.
For sure.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Council President Rule, yeah, I heard you next.
Helen was always one of my favorites. She was my neighbor's best friend, so I got to see a lot of Helen. She was always up for debate. I always appreciated her decisions. We didn't always agree, but we were very, she was very generous in us being able to disagree agreeably and still maintain our friendship, so much so that as soon as my oldest son was ripe at working age to mow lawns, she scooped him right up and he mowed Helen and Skip's lawn for many years and created a friendship too. So she will be missed by all.
Thank you, Council President Rule. Councilwoman Duquette?
You know, just, I did not know her well, but she's a role model for all of us, women especially, I think, in the Sandpoint area. But thank you for that sharing.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, Helen, if you observed, as I had the fortunate opportunity to do in probably 100 meetings or so, even when she disagreed very strongly with everyone but former Mayor Ray Miller, she was able to reach across and overcome that and see what bound us more in unity and in agreement than disagreement. So we can certainly take that and learn from Helen. So moving on. Next, I have a couple of proclamations to share, and I'll begin by honoring our police officers. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed a proclamation designating May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which that date falls was designated as National Police Week, recognized this year as May 11th through May 17th. Whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Sandpoint Police Department, who stand watch over our citizens, families, neighborhoods, and business, serving as essential role as protecting life and property and safeguarding our rights and freedoms as America. Whereas, according to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund end-of-year Law Enforcement Officers Fatalities Report, the numbers of law enforcement professionals nationwide who died in the line of duty increased last year 25% compared to the previous year, with 147 federal, state, county, municipal, military, tribal, and U.S. territories officers tragically losing their lives in the line of duty in 2024. This included one officer, Officer Tobin Blotter, a 27-year-old Ada County sheriff here in Idaho. The sheriff deputy shot and killed during a routine traffic stop in April last year. Whereas during Police Week and on Peace Officer Memorial Day, tens of thousands of law enforcement officers from around the world converge on our nation's capital and gather with their families and neighbors in their own jurisdiction to honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in serving their communities. And whereas the city of Sandpoint is sincerely grateful for our local officers who have answered the call to obtain the necessary professional training and certifications and put on their uniform and badge every day, making significant contributions to maintain our safe, friendly town where we can enjoy and feel confident and secure working, living, recreating, and raising our children. Now, therefore, I, Jeremy Grimm, Mayor of Sandpoint, Idaho, do hereby proclaim May 11th through the 17th as National Police Week and May 15th as Peace Officer Memorial Day in Sandpoint, publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation, and encourage all citizens to take time to acknowledge and appreciate our police officers and honor all peace officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Proclaimed the 7th day of May, 2025, City of Sandpoint, Idaho. Police Chief, can I offer this to you?
Thank you.
It's kind of ship, you see. He's in the middle. All right. Yeah, we'll just do this like this. Perfect. Thank you.
And one more equally important proclamation. This one represents National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Weekend in the U.S. Whereas May 2nd through 3rd, 2025 was designated as National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Weekend in the U.S., honoring firefighters and emergency service personnel who have sacrificed their lives to save others. Whereas firefighters and emergency service personnel play an essential role in the protection of lives and property in our community and communities across the nation, with International Firefighters Day also recognized during the Memorial Weekend. Whereas an average of 80 firefighters courageously make the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty each year. And whereas it is imperative that our elected and appointed officials and all community members do our part to increase efforts in reducing deaths, injuries, and property loss from fire. Now, therefore, I, Jeremy Grimm, Mayor of Sandpoint, call upon our citizens, businesses, and organizations to remember the fire and emergency personnel who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Further, I encourage all of us to recognize the courageous and essential work of the dedicated fire and emergency service personnel in our community, including those members of our own Sandpoint Fire Department who, by faithful and loyal devotion to their duties, render invaluable service to our community. Proclaim the 7th day of May, 2025 in the city of Sandpoint. And before the fire chief comes up, I just like us all just to take a quick moment of silence to think of and recognize the sacrifice these folks have made. Thank you very much. Gavin.
Yeah, I've got a bigger, it's a lot bigger button. Looks like a good bet. Yes, absolutely. Chief, thanks for all this. There you go, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Included in the meeting packet is the fiscal year 2025 second quarter financial report. Do councilors have any questions regarding this report? Hearing none, we will proceed. Just some general announcements from the mayor and council. First, from the mayor, I'd just like to point out a couple of items. First of all, Councilman Howarth was the target of again, another sophisticated scam in the last week. For the public and for other council members and developers, anyone, the scam was similar to one we saw earlier in the year. Basically, it is a fairly detailed email that appears to come from the city of Sandpoint or Sandpoint staff or the planning and zoning commissioner, saying that there are needs for payments to be made in order to process their application. It's quite clear the scammers are looking at our website, scrubbing it, and getting pertinent details of applicants. Just remind everyone, if you ever have a question regarding an invoice or a request for payment, please either call the city or contact the city, and always check the actual email address. These are looking very good, and they're very easy to fall susceptible to. So just keep in mind scam alerts out there. Secondly, yesterday was pretty exciting if you like asphalt and downtown revitalization and tree preservation. They were able, and Holly will tell us more, they were able to put some asphalt down on the city parking lot. I'm biased, but I think it is looking splendid out there. Police chief and I drove by and noted the new entrance and the elimination of the old entrances and the potential safety benefits of not having all that activity happening in a bike lane or adjacent to a busy intersection. Just a brief update to council. Last week I was down in Boise, met with Congressman Fulcher, Simpson, Senator Rich, and Crapo staff discussing the wastewater treatment plant and lack of federal funding or state funding to support our efforts to replace our plant. It's not looking great. Basically, the word was there's not a lot of money left. There's obviously a lot of debt out there, and we're going to have to struggle to find creative ways to address the plant. Working with staff, we are going to make a creative recommendation to changing the federal code of regulations, basically the rules, the EPA governing total effluent BOD and TSS reductions in the short. The present law says that you have to reduce inflows by 85%. So when we have these very diluted and high volume events, rain on snow, the actual amount of BOD and TSS is relatively low, but we still, because of the dilution, we still have to remove 85% of it, which causes us to have to build a plant that can do that, even though after disinfection, even without removal, we would still meet our permits and have effluent that's safe and environmentally sound. So Senator Crapo's staff was very open to bringing that forward at the federal level for some changes that might help us. Beyond that, we had a meeting with a Resort City Coalition. There is an active effort to expand the local option tax from beyond just resort cities to all cities and counties in the state. In that sausage making process, there's a lot of conversation about and a preference to require 50% of all collections to go to property tax reduction if it were expanded. That would obviously, if enacted, would have a pretty significant impact on Sandpoint, as our resort city lodging tax presently in place does fund significant positions in police, fire, and parks. So I am actively working with the Resort City Coalition to come up with a carve-out for traditional resort cities that would allow us to remain whole and not lose potentially 50% of our tax collections. And then finally, we are working with the clerk to establish a date for a end of May workshop so that Director Welker can present to all of you various options, background, and plans for the management and functioning of the Russell Center. So if you haven't gotten back to the city clerk, Melissa, if you could please look at your calendars and see if there's a date towards the end of May that we could get together to have that discussion, that would be greatly appreciated. Other than that, I would yield the floor to any council members for any announcements or reports.
Mr. Mayor, I have one.
Councilwoman Duquette.
Sustainability Committee meeting was last April 22nd. I did not attend. I was at the opening of the Smart Center, Recycle Center in Airway Heights, but Vice Chair took over because the chair, Mr. Bittner, was not there either. And let me see. They changed the agenda a little bit, new business. We have been trying to find out a better time that we could get more members to meet. It's been pretty hard to get people to attend. So they came up with fourth Tuesday of each month at 2:30 instead of at 12:30, I think it was. So 2:30 to 4. And They continued working on the comprehensive plan chapters and their relation to sustainability using a matrix that one of the members had come up with. And then somebody, a student at Sandpoint High, had presented a project on bears. And the committee realized that the city doesn't, they didn't know of any known bear issues in the city limits at this point, so they sent him on to the county perhaps. And that was all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Duquette. Any other council member reports or announcements?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilman Schreiber.
Yeah, the Urban Forestry Commission held its regularly scheduled meeting on April 24th. One item of note is, as a member of the Tree City USA, we have to have an Arbor Day celebration each year. And this year we decided to hold it a little bit later than the actual Arbor Day so that we could coincide with the planting of the new trees at the downtown parking lot. So for now, our tentative date is going to be the May 31st Farmers Market. And so there'll be a celebration from 9 to noon at Farm and Park, and then afterwards we'll head over to the downtown parking lot to plant the 2 new trees. And that's a great segue into the other item that was discussed, which is the 2 varieties of trees that will be planted. As you might remember, there was 6 locations for trees in the design of the parking lot, 4 of which already had trees. So there was 2 spots that needed new trees. Both on the western parking row. The southernmost end is going to get a larch, and the middle is going to get a ginkgo, but a male variety. Some people might know that female ginkgos have a certain odor. Other than that, we just continued the discussion about the definitions for heritage and other valuable trees in Sandpoint, which is an ongoing discussion that continues.
Didn't know there were male and female trees. You learn something new every day. Thank you, Councilman Trevor. Any other council reports?
Yeah,
or-
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of quick
Yeah.
thank yous. Thank you for the striping, the restriping downtown, especially on Pine and Fifth. I think that has definitely helped get people through that intersection heading west. Also, the flower baskets look great, so thank you for everybody who was involved. It's a great welcome touch here before Lost in the 50s. And lastly, I was contacted by the Lions Club last week here. They're going to be coming up holding their annual fireworks show and display down at City Beach. They're going to be out at the grocery stores here raffling off tickets. The grand prize is going to be a $5,000 Bonner County shopping spree, and second place is going to be $1,000 cash. The reason I met with them is it costs about $25,000 to put the fireworks show on every single year. And every single year it gets a little bit harder to hit that $25,000 number. So they are looking for business sponsorships, individual sponsorships, volunteers, anybody that can help, and any amount will help as well. You can go to sandpointlions.wixsite.com for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dick. I imagine the country of origin for a lot of those fireworks is going to make the show even more expensive this year. Any other council announcements or reports? Excellent. I'll now yield the floor to staff for some quick reports from the departments. See Cheryl Hughes, Central Services coming up.
Evening, Mayor and Councilors. From Central Services, we just have some special event updates to provide you this evening. The upcoming events, we have the Traverse Park Bike Rodeo. That is Friday, May 9th at Traverse Park. It's sponsored by Lake Pondere School District, and it's from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. We have the Long Bridge Half Marathon, sponsored by the Priest Lake Multi-Sports. Registration ends at 9 a.m. on the race day. It's going to be at City Beach. It's a run and walk event. And then we have the Lacrosse on the Lake. It is Saturday and Sunday, May 10th and 11th, being held at Great Northern Centennial in Traverse. And it is 1st through 8th grade boys and girls lacrosse tournament. And of course, we have Lost in the 50s, May 16th and 17th, with the car show on the 17th and the parade on the 16th. And just Marcia's Snack Shack was set to open on May 23rd, and they're actually going to be opening it on Friday, May 16th. So it's going to open a week earlier, and they are very excited to get the snack shop up and running again. And I just wanted to mention that this week is the 56th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, May 4th through 10th. So many thanks and appreciation to our very own city clerk, Melissa Ward, and Deputy City Clerk, Haley Keys. And that's all I have.
Could not do it without you. Thank you, lady.
Very much appreciated. Thanks. All right, and that's all I have to offer this
Any,
evening.
any questions for Cheryl?
Great, thanks.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. On those events, I'll also, if you're not aware, it's not a city event, but the Panda Theater is holding a gala. I believe they're going to be their first annual on the 9th. If you are so interested in supporting or attending, Panda is an amazing anchor and resource for our community. So look up their website, and if you have a free time, it sounds like a fun night. Chief Kuhn, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Mayor. Couple tidbits of information from the police department side. First off, I got an email from Councilwoman Duquette asking about our trucks, signs, and et cetera on Pine Street. And I'm going to look over my shoulder because I'm not sure if our signs are up. So I met with Holly and met with her staff here 2 or 3 weeks ago, presented some new ideas for some new signage to come up for the exit ramp coming into town. If I remember right, the state has approved it. It's going to be a larger sign that says no trucks. It's going to mount on top of one of the exits. One of the issues we're still having with some of our logging trucks from coming from out of the area is they're not seeing that smaller sign on it. So I'm hoping that will address the issue. We did issue a citation to one of those logging trucks. They were coming out of the Lewiston area, missed the sign, ended up on Pine Street. So we're still seeing some of those trucks that aren't local still utilizing it. Enforcement's still happening. They're still being stopped and issued citations. So that'll be probably an ongoing issue forever. But I've seen a drastic reduction in the amount of trucks that are using it in the time that I'm watching it, which is positive. But I think with some better signage, we'll even get better compliance. So there's that's going on. The other just tad bit of information that I have is summer's here. For those of you that haven't noticed, it is a fantastic time to get out and walk or ride your bikes. With that being said, my wife and I have been out using our trails and walking a lot in the last month, which is fantastic. The concern I've had as I've walked is reference to our bicyclist in our community. And I say that just as a good warning, a reminder for myself when I ride my bicycle and those that are riding their bicycle. I often walk both trails in town. And yesterday when I walked, it was fantastic because I think every bicycle that passed me gave me some type of verbal warning, either with a horn or with a ringer or verbally, hey, passing on your left, which is fantastic because it gives pedestrians a chance to step off to the side, get out of the way, make sure there's plenty of room. But with that, just a couple reminders that if you're a bicyclist, be courteous, slow down, give a verbal warning of some type, whether it's a horn or an audible saying passing on your left, slow down. I've been passed from some of the new e-bikes, probably going 25. One of the things I don't think we understand is we can actually outrun sound in law enforcement when we're running code and we're going in excessive speeds. We can actually outrun our sirens. So the public doesn't know we're coming because we're traveling so fast that they don't hear the sound. We're there before they hear it. I was thinking yesterday as I was walking, I think some of our bicyclists on our e-bikes are probably accomplishing the same thing. If they are giving a warning, they're actually getting to me faster than their audible passing on your left because they're not slowing down. So I think it's important for the public and for us, whether we're riding our bikes or watching, just to be good stewards. Slow down, give a warning, give a chance for people to get out of the way. And the same would be for the pedestrians. Don't wear 2 headphones, don't crank your music up, don't run in the middle of the path. When you see bicyclists coming, be courteous, step to the side. So I think it goes both ways. But I think with summer coming, it's a fantastic time just to stop and be a reminder. We have a lot of people using our paths, which is fantastic to see. The last thing we want to do is have EMS or us down there because someone got ran over or hit and ended up injured. So just a quick update on some of those things, and that's what I have.
Thanks so much, Chief and Council. On that note, we did discuss this today at Department Head and great use of the Ped Bike Committee. Maybe staff will be looking at some costs for striping and maybe just some typical signage on our paths and, you know, what is prudent passing behavior and maybe even striping the paths, bikes on one side, walking on the other. So we're gonna try to find a solution before someone gets hurt out there.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Council President.
Possibility to do a little more of that education at the rodeo coming up?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll be there. We're going to talk
Oh,
about,
great.
some cities have went as far as to adopt a city ordinances that actually require people to use audibles. The city of Sandpoint doesn't have
Hmm.
any ordinances that address it. Um, Just kind of food for thought for the council. We've talked about it historically, but nothing recently. With the e-bikes and some of those things that are coming out and the increase in problems, it might be something that we need to discuss down the future. But our bike rodeo next week, we're going to be there with the kids and have some of these conversations. So it'll be
Mhm.
good.
Are we doing some of the education in the schools also? Any of that stuff?
We have not. I know, I want to say it's Erin with the Lake Ponder School District. I know she's a big proponent of doing some of these activities. I'll visit with her and find out what exactly they've done and let you know.
All right, that'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilman
Chief,
Dick.
I've been meaning to ask this for a while here and I always forget. How are we doing with lost and found dogs and cats in Sandpoint?
Yeah, we're doing, I personally think we're doing fantastic with the program we've adopted. It's working out really well. I think in the last 6 months, we as the city have only had to hold probably 5 and maybe less than that for 5 days. Most of those dogs were able to scan, locate owners and get him back. Some of those that we haven't been able to scan, those that have found the dogs have been willing to hold on to them for the time limit and then take them to the shelter. And the shelter is actually still partnering with some of the private citizens to take in those dogs in a shorter time frame. So I think overall it's still working great.
Good to hear.
Any other questions for the chief? Thanks for all your work, Chief. Holly Ellis, Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll start with some of our project updates. So the mayor touched on earlier our downtown parking lot project that is in construction. Asphalt went down yesterday. Today they worked on concrete, so sidewalk and the concrete approach. They'll be striping and putting signage in tomorrow and Friday. We are looking to do a ribbon cutting on Tuesday, which is really exciting. So stay tuned for an official invite and announcement on that. Tuesday, 10 a.m. ribbon cutting and full opening for the parking lot. It'll look like the work will be stopped, but we're waiting for the concrete to cure on the approach. It straight things over time, so we can't drive on it right away, but we're getting close. So Tuesday is our opening day, and we're really excited that we're hitting our target in time for Lost in the 50s. The lift station project is going well. It's on schedule, and a reminder that project is located at City Beach and off of Superior at the first intersection. They're on target to meet their schedule of June completion. There's one more tie-in work over by the City Beach end, so they'll get the hotel reconnected to with their sewer lateral, and they'll go back and pave. So just a little bit more work over the City Beach area before that project wraps up. We also have our Ruth Sewer Main project that's right over here between Boyer and Ruth in that alley, and that project is progressing as well. They finished their final block. They're going to have to go back and do some rework on their first block that they worked on, and they need to button up their intersection. That sewer main project is progressing. Popping over to our wastewater treatment plant. Good news, we did get our draft PER from Keller. I sent it over to Stantec, which is another consulting engineer that we work with frequently to do a review. So as soon as we get their review and kind of that okay, we'll present it to council for review, and we'll do an open house as well to present that to the public. Also on our wastewater treatment plant, you'll recall in February of this year, we had an upset or a bypass by DEQ. That resulted in DEQ coming and doing an inspection at our plant. They sent us a letter just last week, or maybe a week and a half ago now, letting us know that we're out of compliance on a few things. So their letter highlighted 6 violations, 5 items of concern, and 2 actions needed. So Devin, myself, and 3 consulting engineering firms are working on our response back to DEQ. Just a quick summary. I'll present this all to you in a formal meeting once we have our action items at the next council. But just to give you a quick highlight, some of these items are going to be addressed with the new plant. Some of these items are misinterpretations and clarifications that DEQ needs. And then there are some action items that we're able to take. We've got our utilities department coming in to help fix some pipes. So you'll get a full summary of what our response is and how we'll formally respond to DEQ in a couple weeks. So Devin's working really hard on making sure that we're getting all the documentation that they're requesting. On streets, last week we had our contractor out striping our pavement markings all through town. That work was mostly done. They have some cleanup work that they're going to come back and do next week, so you'll see them again out here. Our street supervisor was out inspecting and wasn't quite up to the level of service that he anticipated, so they've got some rework. You'll see them out next week fixing some stuff. Our crews are also downtown right now doing some restriping work, and they completed branch pickup a couple weeks ago, which was pretty successful. Our street crew is also busy. You'll see them out. They're doing an inventory of our pedestrian crossings for those flags. Sometimes those flags disappear and they move around. So they're kind of taking a holistic inventory, and we'll get new signs ordered or new flags ordered for those pedestrians where needed. Corey Kuhn touched on our ITD truck signage, so stay tuned for more signage on our new truck route. And that is all I have for.
Thanks so much, Holly. Just a couple other things related to some of those subjects. The parking lot, the lights are going to be a couple weeks, delayed 2 weeks.
That's right. Yes. So our parking lot, we've got the blank
Pedestals.
The pedestals, thank you. Those are out there, and we have conduit, and so power is run. But the physical light poles and the luminaires are delayed. We kind of saw that this was coming, so it'll be 2 weeks that we won't have the parking lot lighting. We have Century West is our electrical engineer for that project. So they're going to look at what existing street lighting we have with the street lights on the Avista poles and the decorative lighting around the parking lot, just to make sure we don't need anything temporary. So we'll get their confirmation from them, but 2 weeks and then that parking lot lighting will be installed.
Thanks, Holly. And just for council reminder, we have 2 other elements of that parking lot project, which will be the smart camera and then the kiosk that we're working through urban renewal on identifying that the actual provider of the kiosk, which is going to be basically not a reader board, but an informational digital paper that will hopefully improve communications to the citizens and businesses of what's happening in the city and at City Hall. So, and then Holly, one other thing, bond council on the wastewater treatment plant. You want to just give a quick update to the council on that?
Yes, we have contracted and we'll with Holly Troxel, and we'll be having a kickoff meeting for our bond next week. We're still shooting for a bond election in November. So this is going to kick off that big, robust effort.
Thank you, Holly. Any questions for Holly?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Council President.
As we're re-inventorying flags, have we considered the Highway 2 Boyer intersection?
I believe that was brought up by Ped Bike Committee. Is that right? Yeah, we'll look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Holly? And let the record show that Councilman Espiro arrived at 6:03 p.m. Excellent. Thanks so much, Holly. Any other director reports? Fire Chief Gavin Gilchrist.
Evening, Mayor, Council. Just a couple of quick updates from fire. I know police always say that they do fantastic. We're going to start using amazing or swimmingly. It's going to be our thing. So I just wanted to kind of go over, we had some training, some of our crews attended the North Idaho Fire Leadership Symposium last weekend. It was some really good training. Our as our firefighters move up in rank, it's a training is a tiered, they have a core set that everybody has to get, those amount of hours every year. The drivers of the truck have to get a little bit more, and then captains, and acting officers have to get a little bit more than that. And this kind of helps satisfy some of their leadership training that they had to attend, to be able to qualify for the ISO points. Which takes me to my next thing. Our ISO inspection for Insurance Service Rating Bureau inspection is going to be next spring. Got that all kind of wrapped up with our inspector. He's going to call back in November to give us exactly what date and give us some of the pre-course work to their visit. And it kind of involves everybody from fire department through the dispatch center. There's even some public works side of it where they have to get hydrant information, things like that. So we're looking forward to that. We're kind of getting ready to do that. Just getting ready for it. I know I talked to the council earlier this year. We kind of did a comparison of where we were kind of over the last few years and how we trended in our incidents. So we went to a new records management system this January. It's kind of apples to apples, but we're getting some of the good data in. I didn't want to put something out and not have, really anything to talk about, but we are seeing a trend, like we're going up a little bit in our calls average per month. Where last year we were about 78 calls a month. This year we're already looking at about 88 calls a month. Working with the mayor and the resort city stuff the other day, we're putting some of the things together, some of that data. And yeah, it just we're on that roll and we're getting ready to get into the busy season. So we're expecting a little more of an uptick during the busy season. An update on our suppression system compliance. We do, with the Brycer group and the compliance engine. Every time somebody comes out to do an inspection on fire sprinklers or hood systems or anything like that, they upload it into the platform and we're able to engage with those folks to help us make sure that our businesses are in compliance with the fire code. And I want to be around that 90 percentile and maintain it. 100%'s practically impossible. I'd love to be there, but we have gone up a little bit. We're about 81% compliant versus 19 deficiencies, but we're definitely working with those folks and getting that taken care of. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell for fire this month, this meeting this month. You see where my head's at.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions for the fire chief? Thank you, Chief.
All right. You're welcome.
Keep up the great work. And Director Welker, Planning and Community Development.
Good evening, Council. Got some updates for you. I'm going to start with the Recreation Division. Since we met 3 weeks ago, we've had 2 departures in the Recreation Department. Both our superintendent and our sports facility supervisor resigned about a week and a half ago. Leaving the Recreation Division with a staff of 1.2. That's Cami. Actually, Cami's about 0.2. So about 0.4 in our Rec Division right now, myself and Cami. I have relocated to the James E. Russell Sports Center kind of off and on over the last 2 weeks to get a feel for the ebb and flow over there, to get, I'm the acting supervisor over there. I've taken over the staff scheduling, the facility scheduling, in communication with user groups, some of whom are here tonight, actually. We are going to be talking a lot about that in the next month. The mayor talked about our workshop that hopefully we can hold at the end of this month. But in the meantime, in the absence of any rec staff, city-run rec programs have been paused. Programs run by outside groups like the Sailing Association, the Fly Fishing Club has a program going on right now. Sandpoint Tennis Association is in the midst of their doubles league, and we're working with them on their summer doubles league as well. All these programs that are essentially run by partner organizations are expected to continue. The programs that are exclusively coordinated by city staff without city staff to coordinate are going to be paused for now. I'm pleased to say that we have made an offer to a new recreation facilities supervisor. He has not signed his acceptance letter yet, so I will not announce who that is. But we do hope to welcome a new staff person at the beginning of June to take over not just the James E. Russell Sports Center supervision, but all of our recreation facilities. That position will be based out of JER, but will be the point person for use of all city recreation facilities going forward, assuming that offer is accepted. And of course, I have to give a huge thanks to Cami Ahmet. I think everybody here knows Cami. She's been at the city for 23 years. She is the heart of the Recreation Division and Parks as well. If it weren't for her, it would be hard to keep any facilities open right now. It's a very busy time of year with mortgage reservations flowing in. I've been sitting in the desk next to her for the last week and a half, and her phone rings on average once every 5 minutes this time of year. So it's quite amazing to see how much she's handling in the absence of staff in that division. The goal with the Recreation Division is to streamline Sandpoint's recreation strategy to focus on keeping our sports and recreation facilities active and accessible to the community while partnering with local organizations and user groups to deliver sports and recreation experiences that meet the community's needs. I've been doing a lot of outreach with that sporting community over the last couple weeks. There are around 15 established organizations offering youth sports in Sandpoint. And many of you know that over the last 4 or 5 years, especially since COVID, as the city's rec department has attempted to offer youth programs, we've seen very low uptake. And we've actually had a lot of these organizations contact us and say, hey, why are you trying to offer the same programs that we're offering? So we found it a struggle to fill our youth programs with these thriving community organizations, all of which are competing for field space and court space at our city-run recreation facilities. So we're looking at kind of shifting towards our core competency of providing the best field use and court use experience for the community, but letting those organizations that excel in running youth programs take over the provision of those programs. Now, the downside here is that there's not a lot of adult program options out there. So for now, we are unable to support some of the adult programs that we've run in the last couple of years, including softball and volleyball. I'm working with representatives from those communities to try to get them to organize and coordinate their own schedules, their own rosters, referees, umpires, things like that. And the city will be a very willing partner to provide them with the field space and court space that they need. But for now, and with the absence of a recreation superintendent, we're not going to be able to offer the full coordination and planning of those leagues at this time. I'm really hopeful that some of those adult leagues can get organized though, and maybe not this season, but in the very near future come to us as we have seen those 15 youth sporting groups emerge in the community. Yeah, so that's kind of the update on recreation in the city. I'll take any questions after I finish my other updates here. I do want to tell you that our lifeguard program, we do not plan to run this year with only 3 applicants over the last 6 months. And now with the absence of a superintendent in the rec division, it's just not feasible that we have lifeguards trained by the end of this month when that season was set to start. Okay, I've got some parks updates as well. These are exciting. We've got landscaping actively happening at Traverse Park right now. The playground, Dewdrop, our landscape contractor, has been out there for the last 3 weeks. They've been spraying, it is actually spraying. They're spraying topsoil, they're planting more shrubs, and all the trees are planted. About 88 trees total. They'll be spreading rock mulch, which will serve as the kind of stormwater treatment around the James E. Russell Sports Center. And we expected them to be done within a month of this time. Additional parks projects on the agenda for this year. We've partnered with the Rotary Club. They have committed, I don't want to give a dollar amount, but it's enough to provide a shelter at the park, we believe. We're going to be using some parks capital improvement funds to pour the pad for that shelter, but we are pretty sure we're going to have a brand new Rotary picnic shelter at Traverse Park by the summer or sometime soon thereafter. We're putting a safety net up along the foul lines of the 2 fields 1 and 2 to prevent foul balls from flying into the playground. Maeve is working on that right now with some local contractors. And then the final project we hope to accomplish at Traverse Park this year is the completion of the landscaping around the skate park, the installation of a shade structure which BCSA is going to support with their fundraising from the bank slalom event up at Schweitzer a couple months ago, and the installation of a kiosk with kind of safety and etiquette information for skaters at the skate park. We see a lot of use. As you've all seen, that skate park is just exploded with the lights. Kids are out there until 9 and later, sometimes at night. It's an amazing amenity, but with the increased use, we really need to start educating users about good etiquette and how not to, create conflicts at the skate park that we want to avoid. Those are the parks updates. Planning. A big one, you may have heard that the site plan review permit for the Farm and Flats workforce housing development on Church Street will come to a public hearing at the May 20th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This is a site plan review permit. Normally, it's approved administratively, but the intense level of public interest in this project, we've received over 100 comments from the public in the form of emails and letters. And the fact that our code allows the planning director, who otherwise would have approval authority to, and I'll just read what the code says, quote, refer issues regarding the proposal to the planning commission for the benefit of its advice. This is the perfect opportunity to let the planning commission weigh in on a development proposal that otherwise would have been approved administratively. So May 20th, there will be a public hearing here on the Farm and Flats workforce housing project. Finally, I have a couple of staffing announcements. The CPD department welcomed a new admin assistant this week. Her name is Mandy. If you're in City Hall, come see her. She's a Sandpoint native, grew up here, born and raised. We are very excited to have a fully staffed CPD department again. Now, she replaced Krista, who was promoted within the department to the planning tech position. So we've got an outstanding CPD team right now. We do have one opening. It's a new associate planner position, which the mayor and Sarah approved a month or so ago. And we've had a few applicants for that, and we hope to start doing interviews soon for an associate planner who can come in and take on some of the current planning responsibilities, freeing Bill up for some of that long-range planning that you all are very interested in us doing. So that is it from your CPD department head. Do you have any questions?
Thanks so much, Director Welker. Council members, any question for Director Welker at this time? And before you jump in, I just want to, some of the things he spoke about are about the Park and Rec division. That's what we want to have a workshop with you to kind of walk through what we're planning there in terms of a pivot, a little bit of a pivot, sort of modeling off of some other like-sized communities in Idaho and how they operate their park facilities or Park and Rec division. So with that, questions for Director Welker?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Council President Roll.
quick question. Is Cammie still in City Hall?
No, Cam, we've moved the rec division over to James E. Russell.
Okay, so she's over at
Yeah,
James E.
and that's
Russell.
been actually a pretty cool transition. You know, I've started calling James E. Russell the home of Sandpoint Recreation. There's a new sign in the window that's welcoming people on the front door here, and on the old rec admin desk, we've put signs directing people. We've done social media posts. There was a story in the local papers announcing this, both the local papers. And in my several days working in the office next to Cammie over there, we put some cubicle offices in the lobby area there. People have figured it out. People are coming in, I'd say a dozen or more a day, to pay their mortgage fees, to ask about field use reservations, things like that. So it's actually a really nice synergy having the recreation department in our community recreation building. And I think Cammie's quite happy because she's got her own little office over there and is not fielding questions about planning and public works and utility bill payments and all that stuff. So she's actually quite a bit more productive over there.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And then the other, just a compliment, as you know, I'm a physical therapist. I've had multiple patients over the past week and a half just tell me how crowded the new playground is and how much they're loving it. And so I just thought I'd share that with you.
Yeah,
So-
and it's not even quite done. We have about 3 more park benches to install that were made by the Kalispell tribe. We have a barbecue pit that will go in once the concrete pad for the picnic shelter is in. And then once there's a shaded picnic shelter there, it's going to be a whole other story. And even just having the landscaping done is going to transform it. But yeah, I mean, afternoons right now, I'd say close to 100 kids are at that playground with their parents.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, thanks.
Other council questions for Director Welker? Thank you, Director Welker. I think that is going to sum it up for staff reports. I'll now proceed with the public comment portion of the meeting. If you wish to speak and haven't yet completed a sign-up form, please do so and hand it to the staff member at the back of the room. If you'd like to speak on an item included on this evening's agenda under the consent calendar or old or new business that is not a public hearing, now is your opportunity to do so. For purposes of general public forum, you are also welcome to comment on any topic pertaining to the business of the city of Sandpoint that is not included on the agenda. Those attending remotely who wish to speak may raise their hand on Zoom at this time. I'd like to make everyone aware that the city does have a public policy on meeting decorum. The rules are posted just outside the chamber's entry doors. In summary, I would ask that everyone please be pleasant and respectful, not make derogatory statements about others, including city staff, not be disorderly or disruptive, no calling out or clapping or holding up signs. Please note that council cannot take testimony on any planning-related matter outside of an official public hearing. Public comment time is for comments only, no questions or debate. You're welcome to contact me during regular business hours if you have any questions or concerns about the city. This is the only general public comment that will be offered this evening. When it's your turn to speak, please state your name and whether you reside in Sandpoint city limits. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. And with that, Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak during the general public comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. John Rappel.
Good evening, John.
Good evening. Thanks for hearing me out here. All right, so this might be of interest to everybody that's, since Mr. Welker just finished, I'm just going to read a statement that I wrote here addressing. There's been a great deal of controversy over the James E. Russell Center since the very generous gift was made. Location and usage being two of the biggest sore spots. After 4 months, the city is already looking to change the purpose of the facility from the family's original plan. The Sandpoint Tennis Association was directed by Mr. Welker to come up with our own programs because the city was no longer creating camps, clinics, or leagues. We cannot do anything regarding the location, but we have found help for its usage. With the help of Jeff Klein, we have met with Patrick Drivas, General Manager of Infrastructure and Delivery for the USTA. Mr. Drivas' job is to build the sport of tennis throughout the Pacific Northwest, taking over tennis centers from municipalities and making them successful while taking the burden off the city in which they are located. A few examples of their success in the Pacific Northwest are the Galbraith Tennis Center in Tacoma, where they operate on a private lease from the owner, Mid-Valley Tennis in Longview, Washington, where they worked with the city council to create a plan that benefited both parties, Vancouver Tennis, where they carry a lease from the building's private owner. They are currently in talks with the city of Portland to oversee their tennis programs. And while talking with Mr. Drivas, it became clear that the USTA has very deep pockets and is capable of working a deal in any type of situation. They have their own marketing and accounting departments to help make the Russell Center a success. Mr. Drivas has actually been in the Russell Center and sees its potential, stating that it's one of the nicest tennis pickleball facilities in the Northwest. The USTA understands that it'll take 3 years to get in the black, but their goal is to grow the games of tennis and pickleball. He explained how they start with youth programs, developing skills in a progressive manner. This approach led to a 70% retention of those children as they move to full court tennis. Again, they are not in the business of making money, they want to grow the game. He is aware that other sports may want access and is willing to work with them, provided they do not damage the expensive court service. Before you purchase the new court services or turf, we want you to consider this option. We ask for solutions, and this solution should be given a chance before you purchase these new courts. It would relieve the city of its financial burden and continue to honor the Russell family and their generous gift. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you looking for solutions out there.
Tish Littman.
I missed that.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and City Council. I have to go back to Helen Newton really quickly. She was a neighbor and she knew my late husband for many, many years. And when he passed, she gave him, we used a quote that she gave him on our bookmarks that we handed out at a celebration. And it was, he was not only a gentleman, but a gentle man. And so I have very fond memories of Helen Newton. She was an amazing woman for our city. I want to piggyback on what John said. I'm a city resident and have been for many, many years. I'm the STA vice president. John is the STA president. And when we heard Jason say that in order to get this facility, the James E. Russell Center to succeed, that we needed to find resources to make that happen. And if pickleball and tennis wasn't going to do it, then we're going to look for other sports to make this successful. So we did look into it with the help of Jeff Klein, went to the USTA, and they have an amazing, amazing opportunity for us to keep our James E. Russell Center as a pickleball and tennis facility. And if we could take the time to listen to what Pat Dreves has to say and what's available to us as a community, I think it's well worth our time, our effort, our energy, And I just want to refer to a line that was, that's written in the agreement between the city of Sandpoint and the Russell family that I pulled out of public records. And it says, "The facility will house city recreation programs with an emphasis on court sports, in parentheses, tennis and pickleball, for residents of the city and surrounding areas." And I really hope that we can fulfill the Russell's wishes, which was primarily tennis, and then it included pickleball, and really work toward keeping that true and, an important part of our community, and that we will do anything we can to support that. So please give that some consideration when it comes your way, and it hopefully will be sooner than later.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, Tish.
Mhm.
Really love the solution-oriented focus.
Mr. Mayor, that is all who signed up to speak during general public comment time, and I do not see any hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you so much. That will conclude the general public comment portion of the meeting. Next, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there any member who has a conflict of interest on the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, yeah,
Councilman
I
Howard.
will need to recuse myself. There is a line item under the consent calendar that I have personal interest in, and so at this time I'll step off the dais.
And legal or clerk, should Councilman Howarth, should we just pull that item and address it separately, or so we can act on the other items, or?
If Counselor Howarth recuses himself from the entire consent calendar, then I think that would, then no further action needs to be made.
Excellent. Is there anything else on the consent calendar that you feel passionate about, Councilman Howarth? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilman Kyle Schreiber.
I would actually like to remove item number 10 from the consent calendar, if that
Okay.
changes the situation.
Yeah, I think that probably would. So, in that, okay, so we'll remove number 10 and that'll go to the end of the business. And, Councilman Howard, that means you don't have to recuse yourself, I believe, unless you have a conflict with.
Not for the consent
Not yet.
calendar, but
At
later
that
in the
time you
meeting I will.
Yes. Excellent. For the record,
Mayor, don't we have to have a motion to remove those, or no? Is that at your
no vote
discretion?
required for a council member to remove an
Okay.
item from the consent.
Okay, great.
So, we'll now proceed with the consent calendar. For the record,
Mayor, sorry.
go ahead,
I
Councilor.
would also like to remove 9 to talk about it.
Okay, so removed, and that will go to the end of regular business.
Thank you.
For the record, the total amount of bills for approval is $1,616,939.50, reflecting $864,882.23 for regular payables and $752,057.27 for payroll. Council members, do you have any questions, or is there anything else that you wish to remove the consent calendar? I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar with items 9 and 10 removed.
So moved.
Moved by Dick, second by Spiro. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Sprow,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
No.
Counselor Howarth,
Yes.
Counselor Duquette,
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to a public hearing. At this time, we'll move to the public hearing regarding an adjustment to the city's area of impact. I will now yield the floor to Directly Welford.
I wasn't quite ready to jump up here, but let me get my Zoom set up and then we'll get going into that. Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Would you be interested in moving item number 9 to the top of the agenda? Just since there's a representative from the Festival of Sandpoint here, they might appreciate being able to go home sooner. I'm fine with that if you are.
Thank you. I'm agreeable to that, just for the efficiency of the public's time. Council have any objection to next moving to item 9 from the consent calendar or legal? Hearing none, let's move on to item number 9 that was pulled from the consent calendar, proposed resolution approving Festival at Sandpoint lease city agreement A25-1970-6. Councilwoman Duquette, the floor is yours. You pulled this.
Thank you. I just wanted to see what the other council members thought of our pesticide treatment number 11 in this contract. Last year, when the signs went up around Memorial Field, I believe is what they were supposed to do, to share that there was going to be an pesticide treatment. I was contacted by a few people who were a little alarmed, concerned, and so I had spent some time with Veronica about it and tried to come up with some ideas. She's tried all sorts of things. I've met with her in person and we've emailed quite a bit because of the concerns of the community. And I just wondered what anybody else thought about it. I know that what she said is used is bifenthrin IT, and one of the ingredients in that is bifenthrin, which is very toxic to bees, which is one of the issues that I was having, even though the turf is not real and shouldn't attract our beneficial bees. But that bifenthrin is what they call a restricted use pesticide, and as it's harmful to aquatic animals, and our code 716.6 says, use of any restricted use pesticide, herbicide, fungicide, rodenticide, insecticide, or any other chemical for eradication or control of any plants or animals that is within 150 feet of any water course or sensitive area is not to be used. So I do know that Veronica has said she will put that in the contract. She has tried multiple things to try to make it so she doesn't have to use pesticides, insecticides. I know the mayor and I have spoken about large fans. She also said that she's used large fans on the stage. Some of the performers don't like the large fans. I know that when I was there outside, the gnats are still horrible. I don't know, I just wondered what anybody else thought of that part of the contract, and if anybody has any suggestions. I know they've tried the lights, the attracting lights, and I know that just brings bugs. She said she's tried hornet traps, wasp traps. Again, that just brings them. We did talk about the festival advertising in the reader or the bee sharing the issue that they have. And I'm just kind of curious if anybody else is having issue with that or heard from the public on the issue with that. And what sort of, I don't know, what sort of ideas, other options there would be for that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Duquette. Do you have a proposed amendment or solution to the lease today? Well, I think you've spelled out your concerns well. Council members, any response to Councilwoman Duquette's comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman.
is the pesticide for the gnats, is that what the,
It's for the wasps, I believe, mostly, the hornets, the things around, if we could ask the director. I don't know if that's something that we get to do since she's here.
Let's, are you prepared to provide any feedback to?
I did tell her I was going to pull this off the consent calendar today to give her a heads up.
Hello, Veronica Knowlton, Director of Operations with the festival at Sandpoint. To answer your question, Joel, the target species are gnats, spiders, hornets, and wasps. I've done a lot of digging on pesticides to address the concern of bees. Bees are impacted if they do come in contact with the pesticide. Our application is only to synthetic porous surfaces, so we don't apply to trees, natural lawn. It's primarily to our stage facility, the grandstands, not the seat itself, but the bottom concrete runners. The press boxes in the grandstands are notorious for wasps and hornets. So we take care of that for a public and staff safety consideration. And then fences and banners are our primary application areas.
thank you.
Any Any other
Mr. Mayor?
discussion? Go ahead, Councilman Dick.
How long have we been using the pesticide treatment for the festival?
I've been with the festival since 2023. To the best of my knowledge, they've been applying pesticides since at least 2021. Yeah, I'm not quite sure on that.
Thank you.
And I've
Can we just see if there's any other
Sure, sorry.
council questions or comments?
How to do this, obviously.
Hearing none, Councilwoman Duquette, did you want to make a final statement or question or recommended change to the lease?
I know that they are supposed to let us know 15 days ahead of spraying, and we are supposed to have option to say no at that time. If that's what I read in the contract.
That's correct.
And I just don't know if that's ever happened, because I just found out about it last year when somebody in the neighborhood saw the signs and called and had spoken to some other people. So I'm not sure if that, I do know that Veronica is trying to do everything in her power to make it okay, to appease everybody. She also agrees that she doesn't like the use. But is it the performers who say they don't want bugs?
Yes, with nationally touring acts specific to our performance days, a lot of our performers are coming from Kettle House. They're coming from an amphitheater in Boise. They are very familiar with outdoor venues, and as someone who has worked backstage for 2 years and now I'm on the more facility side, quite a few tour managers are flabbergasted at the amount of bugs that we have in a negative way. Last year, we had one tour manager that was just not thrilled. It's a very small industry when it comes to booking, and so we do our best to provide a reputable space. That way we can attract higher caliber talent. So it definitely has been noticed by nationally touring artists.
We are by the lake. It's hard to not have bugs. We are outdoors. It's hard not to have bugs.
Thank you, Councilwoman Duquette, and thank you for coming tonight. Council, just, I'm looking at the lease. It does says the lessor will, the lessee will notify the city, myself and staff, that we will grant or deny such application in writing. I don't have any legislative direction or basis to deny something. My intent of putting this in the lease last year was so that those applying the pesticides knew that there is a 150-foot separation from water. So unless the council wants to change city code and prohibit the use of pesticides of this type, I would entertain a motion to approve consent item number 9 and the approval of the festival lease at Sandpoint City Agreement A25-1970-6.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Spiro, second by Dick. Any discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Rule?
I just want to say that I appreciate Councilwoman Duquette's concern about this. I'm also concerned about the pesticide piece, but I am going to vote yes, because we have to balance it, so.
Counselor Sprow?
Yes.
Counselor Dick?
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber?
Yes.
Counselor Duquette?
I guess with the pesticides as it is, I would have to say no.
Counselor Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will revert back to discussion item number, the public hearing on the area of city impact, item 11. Area of impact boundary adjustment, Director Welker.
All right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Maybe Melissa, you can make that screen a little bigger there, if you don't mind. Okay, I'm hopeful that most of you had the chance to at least read the staff report and even better, watch the March 18th Planning and Zoning meeting. I'm also pleased that tonight there aren't too many people here concerned about this issue. On March 18th, we had about 30 residents of the rural areas west of Sandpoint in the audience who are very concerned about some of the language in the area of impact legislation that triggered this requirement that we hold a public hearing and propose a new area of impact boundary. I do want to start with just showing you, and I'm going to try to make this really quick actually, because there's not a whole lot I need to explain tonight, given that this was all explained at the March 18th meeting. And I think the concerns of the community members who felt like they were going to be impacted by this change were very much calmed. And in fact, a few members of the public who were there, I think, to speak in opposition to this end up coming up and speaking in support. What we have here is a page from our comprehensive plan adopted on July 17th of last year. The blue, green, and purple areas are our current area of impacts, the current context areas within our very large area of city impact. This is 12.3 square miles. You can see that it goes way up onto the side of Baldy Mountain, way up into the Little Sand Creek watershed, all the way up to Selly Road in the north. And it's quite huge. What is the area of city impact? Let's look at the definition in our state law. It's very simple, very short. I'll put it on the screen here. The area of impact is where growth and development are expected to occur, okay, beyond a city's limits. Areas of impact should be planned for growth and development and should not be used to stop growth and development. But actually, another really important section of this definition in state law is that while cities should receive notice of and may provide input on applications brought to the county in an area of impact, cities do not govern or control decisions on those applications. County commissioners make the final determination regarding area of impact boundaries within their county. County commissioners also make final decisions on any development in an area of impact. Cities have no jurisdiction whatsoever in their areas of impact. So why do we have an area of impact? This is just to basically to give us the opportunity to comment on developments within that defined area. So the proposal is, and further down in this, it talks about except as otherwise provided in this paragraph, an area of impact shall not exceed more than 2 miles from the existing city limits. This was a change to this law, I think just last summer. Our current area of impact is much larger than 2 miles beyond city limits. So we are coming into compliance with the state law. We're also fulfilling some of the intent of the state law, which is that areas within an area of impact must be able to be annexed and likely to be annexed. Now, this is the bad word that people were worried about in that public hearing on March 18th, the word annexation. And if you watched the video, I rewatched it today, I went into this kind of distinction between ability and likelihood. I don't think anybody on city staff, I don't know if anybody on this council or the mayor has any intent to annex anything within the proposed area of impact, but ability is the key word there. Much of the blue area that you see on this map, that we would never be able to annex. There's absolutely no possibility of serving utilities beyond 2 miles outside of city limits in our lifetimes. So you'll also notice in the comp plan map, there's a hashed line, this little red hash line. This was the proposed area of impact boundary in anticipation of the new legislation requiring a maximum of 2 miles. And also during the comp planning process, the city leadership determined that hashed area is essentially the extent to our potential ability to expand in terms of growing services outside of current city limits. So all we've really done in the planning department in the last couple of months is take that hash line and put a finer point on it. So I'm going to pull up. Unfortunately, I don't have a really I can't do this in city GIS, but I pulled up another GIS application here and basically created a more defined proposed area of impact boundary to present to the Bonner County Commissioners this summer. And you can see here what that proposal is. This is 3.4 square miles down from 12.3 square miles. It's an 80% reduction from our current area of city impact. And you've heard I've kind of gone back and forth between the use of the terms area of impact and area of city impact, because until the legislation was passed last summer, this was known as the area of city impact. That the state legislature has quite literally taken the cities out of the area of city impact, and now it's just the area of impact. And the legislation has further clarified that cities have no authority within their areas of impact. This is county property. It's just what is the city able to serve with utilities and possibly expand into in the near future. So yeah, this is the proposal. There's one overlap with our adjacent city of Dover and what they're proposing to the county. And that is this little area down here south of Ontario Street, adjacent to Highway 2. In a meeting with the cities of Dover, Kootenai, and Ponderay, back in, I don't know, December or so, all the planning teams, planning directors came together in our conference room upstairs. And the purpose of that meeting was to see whether there were any conflicts. I will point out that the city of Sandpoint is proposing basically relinquishing all these areas that I'm highlighting here below south of Pine Street. Those are currently in our area of city impact. We are proposing basically giving that over to Dover. Dover is interested in including that in their area of impact for possible future annexation. And the city of Sandpoint planning team believes that that's perfectly reasonable. We're not really likely at all to want to annex this area south of Pine Street. This is like going up Syringa Heights Road, parts of Ravenwood Drive. But we do believe in the planning department that this area down here makes sense to be in the city of Sandpoint's area of impact. It would be more easily served by city of Sandpoint utilities, given the approximate mile of shared border with city of Sandpoint limits. And there is only a very tiny portion of the city of Dover right along Ontario Street that is adjacent to that property. So what does this mean if there's a conflict in our proposed areas of impact? It just means we're going to leave it up to the Bonner County Commissioners to decide. We're not going to go in there fighting for it necessarily. We're going to just propose, submit the proposed boundaries from whatever results from tonight's meeting and let the Bonner County Commissioners decide whose area of impact it makes sense to put that little pocket into. In the north, we've gone from Samuels Avenue way up here. That's where our current area of impact ends, all the way down to Bronx. We've included the Sweetgrass subdivision, which is a suburban style small lot subdivision right here. We've included Vadelwood, which is a suburban style small lot subdivision right here in our areas of impact. They're already in our area of impact. We're just suggesting that they remain in there. And you notice that all of the properties along Woodland and at the base of Schweitzer Mountain Road, these are properties that are served by the Edelweiss Water District. That's City of Sandpoint Water, essentially. We're including those in the area of impact. And then all of the Syringa Heights Water District is, well, not all, I apologize, that's not true. They do have some clients south of Pine Street, I believe. But some of the Syringa Heights Water District as well, all which goes up to Baldy Mountain Road, is proposed to remain in the area of impact. So I don't need to talk much more. There's not much more to it. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to take them. If you have comments, proposals.
Thank you, Director Welker. Appreciate it. And just for the council's benefit, I did have a meeting with the mayor of Dover, George Eskridge, about the area. If you can zoom into that area adjacent east of Chuck Slough, that would be helpful. So this area obviously seems to make a lot of sense to me. Obviously, we serve water presently to the development to the east, Northview, and the new subdivision there. It seems proximity, nice geographical boundary of Chuck Slough. To the east is Sandpoint, to the west is Dover. Mayor Eskridge and I agreed to disagree on this. He thinks this is appropriate to be brought into the city of Dover. So I just frankly disagree. So I think I would actually go and represent the city when this goes to the county commissioners and make a compelling case for why this makes sense to be in Sandpoint's city area of impact, unless the council objects to me making a very strong stand on that issue. But with that, any questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman.
First a comment. Kudos that we are actively shrinking the area of impact. I think that's fabulous. As I read the code, though, I have a question. It says compliance with the Idaho State Code. Idaho State Code Section 67-6526 mandates that an area of impact shall not exceed areas very likely to be annexed within the next 5 years. So my question is, how does the city determine which areas are going to be likely annexed in the next 5 years? Do we go out and do a survey of all of the property owners within the proposed area of impact to get any input on whether or not they're gonna consider annexation or not.
No.
So how do we fulfill that requirement of the state compliance?
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
Councilman Howarth, I would suggest that you contact your state representatives in the legislature and ask them what the definition of very likely is.
I don't think I need to ask
In
somebody.
my opinion, it's very poor legislation. It's
Well-
vague, it's undefinable to some degree.
But annexation is, I would think, is determined by the property owner coming to the city and said, I would like to propose annexing my property into the city.
That's one type of annexation. In Idaho, I believe there's three types of annexations three ways annexation can occur. That either Bill, Jason, or Zach speak to that.
And to the extent that I would weigh in, I guess in my opinion, I agree with Mayor Grimm that it's poorly drafted legislation in that we don't know what very likely to be annexed means. I think that areas which are in a situation where the utilities can be served, for example, we can serve them water, sewer, those are areas that are going to be more likely to be annexed than not. But you're absolutely right that 99.9% of annexation comes from consent of the property owner.
Yeah.
But we can't do a survey to determine which property owners are hemming and hawing about annexation over the next
Well,
5 years.
then you're arbitrarily, according to their statute or their regulations, determining the area of impact. And while I commend us that we're shrinking it, it still feels very arbitrary. West of the city, much of that is served by Syringa Water. The city's not going to provide water service there, I don't think, unless they decide to combine the two water services. But, my only question is, why is it as large as we're proposing today? Feels very random that we've drawn it the way that we have, other than to say, hey, it's good news, we've shrunk it by 80, and I commend you for that. That's kudos to the city. Still feels very arbitrary.
Councilman Howarth, I'll take the first crack at this. It's unlikely during my term that we will try to aggressively or forcibly annex any properties. The primary benefit of having an area of impact is that we will still continue to receive notification from the county of development and the ability to comment on those. And I'll use some further arbitrary examples. If we had a new water plant design or a water system design, and we knew that we needed a large easement that we'd pay for, and there was going to be a tank right in this middle of this picture. By having it in our area of impact, we would be notified of maybe a high-density development there where we could say, hey, we have plans for a large waterline easement. Please consider that, and upon your review of the application, potentially make that a requirement that they engage with the city or dedicate an easement for public utilities. Likewise, I'll use, if you can zoom to Lulu Court, Jason, do you know where that is on Pine? This subdivision is an example where we ended up providing water and sewer to the subdivision. It's in our currently ACI, but you'll notice that this subdivision has curb, sidewalks, gutter, street standards that parallel and match the city. Even when, development occurs in the county, if we can have at least the opportunity to recommend that, hey, your septic systems, they fail. You put in 2, that's the minimum requirement in the county and Panhandle Health. When those fail, you're going to need sewer. If you need sewer, you're going to have to annex to the city in the future. You may want to consider building the street to city standards now so that when you annex, you don't have to rip up a whole street and build them to the city standard, because we're only going to accept an annexation and adoption of roads that are built to city standard. So my point is that it simply gives us the opportunity to have a conversation and to give our perspective to areas that either in 5 years or less potentially may come into the city, and what those street standards are, design standards, easement needs, et cetera, could be.
Makes rational sense to me. I fully get it. I'm just reading what the code
Oh, no.
dictates and trying to understand how we interpreted it to go say, this is where we draw our boundaries. And what I heard was, we didn't take that into consideration. We shrunk it. We thought this was better than what it was previously. And I agree with that. So somehow we have to make it less arbitrary in the future. And I don't know, how often do we review?
Once every 5 years. is
Once every 5
the
years.
legislation, yeah.
I think the last thing I would weigh in on is that this is a legislative decision and it is inherently arbitrary to some extent. And so you, as the decision makers here, kind of have the authority to decide what is very likely to be annexed kind of right here and right now. That's kind of that point.
And that would be arbitrary to some
I
degree.
mean, to some extent, it's inherently arbitrary.
Yeah,
There's no,
that's right.
there's no getting around that.
Flip a coin. Thank you.
Any other council questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman Schreiber.
I've got quite a few questions. Some were very similar to Counselor Howard's. It seems like the main reason that a landowner would want to annex into the city is for city services, correct?
Yes.
Just to give you an idea, I did, in preparation, I looked at a couple specific properties. I won't bring them up here, but a property in Bonner County outside of the water districts can subdivide down to, Mr. Mayor, I think it's as small as a 5-acre parcel right now.
In the suburban zone, you can go to 2.5
acres, 2.5 acres with no water or sewer, 1 acre.
Correct.
So, you know, the ability to have access to water and sewer just by orders of magnitude increases the land value for properties that are immediately adjacent to city limits right now. So remaining in the area of impact is very much likely in the best interest of some of those property owners if it means they are able to annex into the city in the future. I think sometimes annexation is viewed as something that is forced upon property owners, but in most cases in the state of Idaho, it's property owners who are requesting to be annexed so that they can do development that isn't possible without annexation.
Right. So the access to utilities allows them to make a more dense development.
By an order of magnitude, like tenfold more dense. Yes.
And so, as was already pointed out, we have Edelweiss Water District serving water. We have Syringa Heights Water District serving water. Does any of this overlay with Northside Water District?
Yes.
We have
The
Northside
north of the
Fire
river.
District that provides fire protection for most of this,
West
I
side.
believe, and West Side. Okay. What else? Do we have sewer lines running across the tracks? You said
Only on
Lula
Pine.
Court.
Lulu Court on Pine.
What about Goodman?
I don't,
And do they have septic or are they
Um,
on our sewer?
Goodman, no, the only other one that I'm aware of is north of Timber, it's called Timber Line up on west of the new Bulldog project.
Is there no sewer in the?
Yeah, right here. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the areas directly around where we have sewer lines crossing the railroad tracks would be the ones that would be most likely to benefit, right? And so when we look to the north, say, there's probably very little opportunity simply because you'd have to extend sewer lines out there.
To the north, well, I think when you look at everything north to the base of Schweitzer, U of I property up there, that's all relatively easily served, especially those big field, the R&S properties, and then north of there as well.
Okay, so those are likely to be served with utilities and therefore likely to create an incentive for those property owners to want to be annexed. I mean, the other service that we offer is police protection, but there's the county sheriff's department right there. And I believe there's a enclave directly across the street from the sheriff's department that refuses to be annexed because they don't need our services, right?
Oh, correct. Due east of the fairgrounds. Formerly had been annexed and was de-annexed because the landowners didn't want to be in the city.
This little island right
Yep.
here.
The donut hole.
So really, it's just the sewer that we're offering to a landowner, because they can probably get water from a water district outside of the city limits.
Today they could.
Okay. I did want to point something out with that Dover overlap. Isn't
And
Two of
potentially
those-
enhanced fire service if you thought the city of Sandpoint Fire Department.
That's an interesting point. Now, if I recall from the JVA conversations, we continue to have an agreement with all the other fire districts for mutual aid, correct? So even if Northside couldn't, we would still show up regardless of whether they're in our city limits or not. Is that correct?
I'm gonna have the chief have to speak to that. If Northside doesn't show up, up on Base of Schweitzer, do we show up?
These Schweitzer, if they request us for mutual aid, yes.
Right, so they don't have to annex to get fire protection from us if their fire district were to request mutual aid.
So we have an automatic aid with them, for certain calls, not medical. Nobody goes to, each other's medicals unless Bonner County EMS requests us to go. If they annex in, it depends on, cause they stop I think it's just before the Little Sand Creek water plant. I think that's right about where their district stops. So if they're gonna annex anything else, or if anybody else wants to annex in, they're gonna have fire protection. Because it's in the county, so it falls under the sheriff's jurisdiction. So if the sheriff requests, then they're gonna send whoever's closest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that-
So, okay.
And there are parts of North Side Fire District that the fire engines have to go through the city of Sandpoint to get to, correct?
I think on our west side, they have some block, there's like a block on the west side and it almost adjoins Sandpoint, but it's surrounded by the West Side Fire District. It's kind of a
The
weird,
teal on this map, Councilman Schreiber, right here. The teal is Northside.
Yeah.
they have like a little pocket in there.
Right. So in that scenario, it would be fairly likely that we would provide mutual aid.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So that seems like that's not a compelling reason for somebody to want to annex, unfortunately. I did want to point out on that section where there was a overlay with Dover, thanks, chief, that there are two properties in that disputed section that have already been annexed into Dover. Am I correct on that?
That wouldn't be in their area of impact if they had been annexed. You're talking about the McFarland property on the south, Rocky Point Investment?
No, it's directly, the two properties directly south of, what is that?
Can you pull up the county map?
Yeah,
Jason?
Kyle, I think, if my, outline, my blue outlined area included those properties, anything we submit to the county would not. Yeah, you're right. I need to adjust this so those two parcels are not in the proposed AI.
Because they're not even in the.
No, you're right that
They're
what
actually
I
in
have
the city.
outlined on that blue area does include those two parcels that are currently in the city of Dover. So we would just shrink that a little bit and get those two parcels out of there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the rest of that area that's in that proposal, just butts right up against a neighborhood that's already in our city limits, so it would make sense for them. But there's a sewer line running across that bridge, across the slough. Is that my understanding?
There's a water line, I know. Spring of water.
Dover has like an 8-inch sewer pipe running over this bridge here. That's their main argument for why they should lay claim to the entire McFarland property.
Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean much to me. What is an 8-inch pipe? Is that enough to supply this entire neighborhood, or is that just for those?
Depends on the use and the density.
Yeah.
Which is another compelling reason by having this, and if it is annexed in the city, we control the zoning on it versus Dover could make that their industrial zone if they wanted.
Speaking of sewer, do we have, you know, pump station capacity out in that area to be delivering service, or is it something that would cost a lot to upgrade?
I don't think we've done a comprehensive, Holly might have some of the details on it, but typically development pays for upgrades to lift stations and sewer lines. Follows them as part of the development process.
We have a sewer collections plan that anticipates for growth. So growths in our previous ACI have been kind of planned for and accommodated for. And then Mayor Jeremy Graham described it perfectly that growth pays for growth. So if there's a lift station needed, development would pay for that. But we do have a sewer collection plan that anticipates growth, when, where, how, and kind of lays that out for us.
Okay, perfect. There's no like known deficiency in that area that would keep us from providing services.
We have deficiencies in our system, and we address them development by development and project by project.
Got
So
it.
that we do have a holistic plan that accounts for all of those.
Okay. Thanks.
And Councilman Shriver, if I can just add, I know you may not be done, so tell me to be quiet if you want to keep going. But just to think about annexation, there's a variety of, as I mentioned, there's three ways you can annex, category A, B, and C. One is a voluntary, I forget, I get them mixed up, where the landowner requests to be annexed. The other, you can get a percentage of landowners in an area, number of parcel size, consent from some, and you can do sort of a lasso around property if you really wanted to. Some reason cities choose to aggressively annex. I think Boulder, Colorado, if you're familiar, is a good example where they intentionally wanted a separation between their cities and a green belt, basically. So if we were to aggressively annex, just because right now we only have the multifamily and single-family zones, we do have a third zone rural residential. We could effectively build in, if it was the council's desire, a low-density residential zone where you would have a buffer between communities. You don't just run town to town. You have sort of a green belt. So that reason, other reasons you would maybe want to consider aggressive annexation would be for tax valuation. As you understand, we are limited in our ability to grow our tax revenue by state statute from property taxes. Annexation is a way you can basically expand your city so you can generate more taxes. Of course, you have to provide services for them, but those are just some other thoughts and things maybe you'd.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. So on a per unit basis, it typically costs more to provide services to a property, correct?
Low density for sure.
Yeah, the lower the density, the more it costs. So it could be a situation where annexing low density development actually costs us more than what it costs us to provide the services. We wouldn't even be
Cost of
bringing in
service,
enough
yeah.
taxes to offset the cost of providing services to those properties.
True.
I think that's my biggest, I mean, obviously, I think that I like the idea of being able to give recommendations to the county, even if they don't listen to them ever. But the idea that we are going to expand our borders that direction into low density development that could very well exacerbate our budgetary problems is a frightening thought for me.
Mhm. And concurrently, if we did forcibly annex, we could do just the opposite. If we weren't happy as a city with low density development out there, you could, in theory, annex it and zone it much higher density, assuming it was capable of being sewered and watered. And you could extend a more city-like footprint or configuration out there.
Sure. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I have a quick question. Can you force annexation?
I'll defer to our legal counsel or planners on that one.
In a word, yes, it can be done.
Mm.
It's not often done, and it's an onerous process.
Mr. Mayor, in this parcel here that's in contention with Sandpoint and Dover, and they've got a sewer line running across, if Dover were to be able to keep that in their AI, how would water service look like from the city of Sandpoint? Are they in Syringa, Syringa Heights Water Service?
It is my understanding they are in the Suringer Heights district right now, and the property to the south of the highway, I believe, is in Dover's. I don't have those specific answers to you right now.
How would the water infrastructure be put in? And who would eventually be responsible for it?
Yeah, for the areas to the north of the highway, which is, I believe, the Syringa boundary, Councilman Howarth might have a better idea. I could find it. I have a map somewhere. Just like our development process, you develop, you meet with the service provider. They say we can serve you. You got to put in a line. It's my understanding the area south of the highway is potentially in Dover's planned water service area. And if it was in ours, we still need to do some work with Syringa to work out some differences. As growth occurred or annexation and development occurred, we would, like Holly mentioned, require the developer to extend services. But for me, it's just, I like clean lines. A river's a clean line, or a slough.
Thank you.
At the end of the day, I would be I would be very surprised if there's any annexation happening in the rest of my term, but there could be somebody could buy one of these properties and say, I want to annex and I want higher density zoning and I want services.
Again,
Oh, go ahead.
again, then could we say no?
We could,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
what would that look like from a planning aspect? I mean, there's a lot of dead end roads and I would say infrastructure deficiencies out there. Would we require them to acquire a lot of right of way or easements in order to do that? Or is that something that we would say, oh, it's in our area of impact, so
For the annexation,
Yeah.
for the actual annexation, it's a step process. The first would be a petition request for annexation. We would zone it at that time. We'd look at our comp plan and say, what's our comp plan suggest this should be? We would zone it, bring it in. It could be conditionally annexed based on a development proposal they have, that they have to do that. And then they would go through the subdivision and development process. I should point out one other thing that's not as important here, but in dry parts of the West, annexation is a big deal because typically when a city annexes land, they procure all water rights to that land. And in Wyoming especially, it's a big deal when you annex a property because you get their water rights. But for me, I guess, Jason, can you pull up just the county map and turn on administrative boundaries? Do you have the ability to do that, or I can join the meeting and do it? You know, what I'm thinking is if this area went into Dover, and if you're familiar with Northview that Jason will bring up in a second here, imagine a police incident and all of a sudden our police car is stopping, you know, at the city lines because it's right next door, but it's not in the city. Yeah, if you just zoom into the specific area that I think we're all talking about.
Yeah, I did look that up in preparation for this
Bingo,
meeting.
right there. And then on that drop-down tab, first, that layer one to the right of that. Yep, and then administrative boundaries. There we go. So imagine right there, right next to Northview, the open field, you know, police rolling up and saying, whoop, sorry, that's the city limits, north of the highway. That would seem very awkward. It's right next to us. It's on the same peninsula, but we've now reached city limits. If you ever watched the Dukes of Hazzards growing up, good old boys would, you know, race to the city limits.
I would imagine we have a similar mutual aid agreement with Bonner County Sheriff.
Chief, how would you react are there any instances where if that was Doverland where the hand is, Um, Would it be more efficient or beneficial to have that in the city limits? Coordination, drug takedowns, investigations, a murder over the city lines.
When it comes to any active threat, it wouldn't matter. We'd respond. But if you're talking like complaints like traffic or burglaries or investigations, we do draw the line and it becomes the county. So if it's an emergency, we are all sworn deputies and can respond. We don't have a mutual aid impact. We just go off of our deputy cards. So it's kind of a loaded question in that aspect. If it's an emergency, we'd respond. If it's not an emergency, we do the same today. We don't go outside of the city.
So if there's a burglary across this line on that northern field,
Who are you gonna call?
who are you gonna call? Okay, thank you, Chief.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Dover has no police department?
Correct, they rely on the county sheriff.
Right. I looked at their website today.
They have no
and it-
building department, they have no planning department, they have no legal department, they contract for all those services, they don't have engineers.
Their website actually lists Chief Gilcrease as their fire contact.
Oh, congratulations, Chief. Council members, any other thoughts, questions, discussion? I guess, in my concluding thoughts is other than the arbitrary nature that Councilman Howarth and others have pointed out, I expect the outcome of whatever this recommendation to the county is maybe we'll get 3, maybe we'll get 1, maybe we'll get no notices of development occurring in this area in the next few years. And maybe we'll have a property owner who says, I really want urban services and I want to annex. And if so, then they get to, this map will determine which city they would annex into. All right, let me get to my script here. We will now prepare to proceed with the public hearing. For the record, any written comments received were included in the meeting packet, otherwise provided to the council. If you wish to testify this evening, please complete a sign-up form and hand it to staff at the back of the table. Because this is not a land use or otherwise quasi-judicial hearing, those attending remotely may testify. If you're on Zoom and wish to speak, please raise your hand at this time. City policy provides that the presiding officer may allow gifted time during a public hearing where you may give up to 3 minutes of your time to someone else. I will allow for gifted time for this hearing. Please note that the person giving time may do so only once, and the person receiving time may only receive 1 gift for a total of up to 6 minutes for the person receiving the gifted time to speak. If you are given time, please state as much when you begin speaking and state the name of the person who donated their time to you. Both parties must be present here in the chambers. Otherwise, each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. The rules of civility and decorum, as recited earlier, are in effect. The public hearing is now open. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to testify? Or are there any hands raised on Zoom?
Mr. Mayor, no one has signed up to testify on this matter, and there are no hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The public hearing is now closed. Council will deliberate and may ask questions of staff. Is there a motion? And the motion would probably be to proceed with the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by President Rule, second by Councilman Dick. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Dick?
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber?
Yes.
Counselor Duquette?
Yes.
Counselor Howarth?
Well, I appreciate the work to shrink it. I have to say no because of the arbitrary nature of the boundaries.
Counselor Sprow?
Yes.
Counselor Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
You, Madam Clerk. We're going to take a 2-minute, 3-minute bathroom break. Can I do it in 3? 7:24. Meeting is resumed at 7:29. Moving on to number 12 under old business. The second to final item on the agenda is a presentation and discussion regarding the draft parking management plan. This is something I think you're all aware Director Welker's been working on for the better part of the year. And appreciate all that work, Director Welker, and please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're going to go through a presentation here. It's actually quite different than the initial presentation first delivered to the Planning Commission back in January when we first presented a draft of the parking management plan. This has been it's May now, almost 6 month process of community engagement. There's actually a slide in here, so I won't go into details, but we've done a lot of outreach, a lot of surveys, a lot of meetings with community groups and 4 different commissions. So I'm going to bring you through this presentation. It's going to start with a little bit of theory that has informed the parking management plan draft that you're going to, well, I'm actually not going to show you the draft. That was in your staff packet, so I assume that you had the chance to read it. But we'll talk about some of the concepts, some of the principles guiding the drafting of this parking management plan, tie it to our comprehensive plan, and share some data in this presentation as well. So we're going to start with a little bit of theory that underpins what we're trying to do with parking management in Sandpoint. And that is this concept of effective capacity. In parking management theory, effective capacity is defined as 85% of parking stalls are occupied during peak hour. Peak occupancy of 85% is kind of the golden rule in urban planning. What that looks like is very simple. It's 1 empty parking stall per block face in a downtown area. So that means if you've got, you're between 2nd and 3rd on let's say Cedar Street, optimally, we would have 1 empty parking space on either side of the street. Why not more? Well, if you have occupancy of less than 85%, or in this case, less than 70%, it really represents an inefficient use of your city parking, your public parking, an oversupply, an overbuilt supply. And of course, obviously, if you have greater than 85% occupancy, you are underparked. You have too much demand. There's not enough turnover. There's not enough vacancy. It creates this cruising effect where people drive around block to block looking for a parking space when they come into town. Traffic congestion and all the negative health emissions, traffic, everything that comes with congestion. So 85% is considered the effective capacity. That's kind of the target that we're going for if we're managing our public parking supply efficiently. So let's look at our actual capacities at different parking facilities in downtown Sandpoint. This is from the 2022 parking study. This was done during a week in July, peak summer season. We had Kittleson and Associates come in and do a very valuable parking study on our various public parking facilities. So we've got in the upper left-hand corner, this is on-street parking capacity midweek. Now, I actually chose the graph for midweek because it's, oh, no, you can see it there. This is midweek and weekend. You can see that midweek occupancy is higher, peaks at 57% at the noon hour among our 1,054 on-street parking stalls. Off-street parking downtown peaks at 83% midweek. Again, why midweek? Because more businesses are open. You've got more employees coming into town for work. On weekends, we see fewer businesses open downtown. So we're right at effective capacity with our parking lot downtown. This includes the 3rd and Church Street lot. This includes actually, this is just the 3rd and Church Street lot. It's about 83% occupancy. We are dramatically below effective capacity with our street parking downtown, and our waterfront parking areas are absolutely beyond effective capacity during the peak hours, which happen to be on weekends. Big surprise, everybody goes to the beach, to the marinas, to the waterfront on weekends. So you can see that our street parking, this is really the 49 parking stalls on Dock Street. This is the street that goes out to the jetty by the Windbag Marina. 100% occupancy from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. 0 parking stalls available on the Dock Street parking stalls, and 97% occupancy for most of the day. That's fewer than 10 stalls available at City Beach throughout most of the day on weekend days at the City Beach parking lot. So I'm going to.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? What is the time frame on that? That's year round?
No, this is during the peak tourist season in July of 2022.
Okay, thank you.
That's when this data was collected. Okay, so obviously you're going to see if you go weekends in the wintertime, City Beach occupancy rates probably 10% or less. That would be a fairly useless study if they had done that in the off-season.
I just wanted to make sure. what
So
we-
let's look at a little bit of the numbers behind these numbers. So we have 1,054 general use street stalls in our downtown core. That's about a 6 by 6 square block radius. And 600 of those are in use at peak hour. If we were at the 85% occupancy rate, that means we have capacity for an additional 296 cars parked on city streets during that peak noon hour midweek in the summer. Okay, that's the math there for you. So the conclusion is the street parking is inefficiently used. By the way, you're going to see several photos in this presentation. These were taken in the last 3 weeks. I'd like to thank the police chief. He sent one of his deputies down with the drone. I did not request this. It was just like perfect timing. This is looking down, I believe is that Poplar Street next to the hospital there? You can see about 50 unused street stalls. This is at 2:30 on a Thursday, about a week and a half or two ago. So a lot of photos here kind of documenting our utilization of street stalls. All of the photos you're going to see in this presentation were taken during the parking lot closure. So we know exactly how many additional vehicles were on the street when these photos were taken. It's around 100 because 83% of 121, which is the number of parking stalls at the city lot, is 100 cars. So all these pictures are going to illustrate or demonstrate what does downtown look like with 100 additional cars on the street that aren't usually there. Off-street parking, this is a very different story. We have on average 14 stalls out of 505 available during the peak hour, which is at noon on weekends in the summer. That's 97% occupancy at our waterfront parking lots and the city and the downtown lot as well. So across all those parking facilities, we have on average 14 stalls available out of 505 compared to the 545 stalls available on our street parking. So what would I asked the question, what would it take to actually get to the effective capacity? We would need to see 62 vehicles that are currently parked in the parking lots downtown and at City Beach either don't come at all. In other words, ride your bike, carpool, walk, or go park on a street somewhere. So effective parking management would see less utilization of our city beach and our city parking lot. And this also includes the Sand Creek lot. It's like behind Farman's Landing there. This includes that lot right before City Beach on the west side of the railroad tracks. It also includes the Pondere Bay Trail lot, which only has, I think, 11 parking stalls at it.
Jason, is it safe to assume that that means a more pleasant parking experience someone who wants a parking spot? They're able to
Keep
find
in
one?
mind that the status quo is 0 parking stalls available at Dock Street. So if you go there anytime during the day on the weekend of the summer, you will not find a parking spot. And on average, 10 parking spots available at City Beach, which is not effective because those are going to get snagged really quick. So yes, absolutely more availability and convenience for people coming to the waterfront and downtown parking lots if we move towards effective capacity. All right, so I'm just going to flip through some photos here. All of the photos taken on my smartphone were taken at between 12 and 12:30 on a Monday during the parking lot closure. All the drone photos were taken at 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday during the parking lot closure in the last 2 weeks. So just to give you an idea of what utilization of our downtown parking looks like during the peak hour, at least in the shoulder season, but we know that the midweek hours are at noon is the peak hour. So I rode my bike down and took a bunch of photos, and then these aerial photos were taken by a police deputy. So just getting an impression of what our downtown parking facilities look like. You can see some familiar landmarks here, the Sandpoint Center on the right. That's Farman Park in the middle, where the farmer's market is. There were about 8 or 9 empty stalls with the parking lot closed a block and a half away. That's the ITD lots. The ITD lot on the left, I'd estimate occupancy was around 10%. There's 113 parking stalls there. There were no more than 15 cars across those 2 parking lots at that noon hour. And then you can see another perspective of Farman Park there. You can see the closed parking lot with about 6 empty stalls on 3rd Avenue there at noon. Some more aerial shots. Looking down Cedar Street there with the hospital on the left. There's an empty spot in front of Joel's. It's a miracle. Let's never see that. Some more good aerial shots looking at our downtown streets. And of course, when you look down 1st Avenue and Cedar Street, you're going to notice very few parking stalls. This is looking down 2nd here, and 2nd's also quite high occupancy as well. So 1st and 2nd, not surprisingly, have very high levels of occupancy. Okay, we'll skip through some of these. Generally, though, it's pretty obvious to see, even with the addition of 100 cars dislocated by the closure of the city parking lot, we have quite a lot of vacant street parking downtown.
But this is April.
It is. That's I quantify. Yeah, this is shoulder season. During peak summer season, you have a lot more tourists in town for sure. Okay. So I observed on average 4 empty parking spaces per block face. That's about 8 empty parking spaces per block if you count both sides. Effective utilization means 1 empty parking space per block face. So there's a perception of, serious parking strain downtown, but the reality doesn't really point to that. The data doesn't support that that's true. So it's inefficient utilization, not the amount of spaces that we have available. And here's another graph from our 2022 parking study. You can see quite clearly this was during the noon hour on a weekday downtown. Orange and red is beyond effective capacity. That's, a few blocks along First Avenue, Cedar Street, 1 block of Second Street, Second Avenue there. But once you get beyond Second Avenue, the vast majority of our street parking is utilized at between 0 and 50% downtown. Okay, so since the first draft of this plan was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission in January, it's a very different plan. What you saw in your council packet, everything in red is what's changed since the first draft based on community engagement and feedback. Here's the background of what we've done. 4 presentations, 2 to planning and zoning. We went to Parks and Rec, we went to sustainability, pet and bike, and actually 3 updates to planning and zoning at this point. They've all provided feedback. We went to the Chamber of Commerce. I think Justin was there, 60 plus businesses at that meeting. Then we had a Downtown Business Association meeting here at Council Chambers with several representatives from that association. And then our survey had 1,811 responses, just over half of whom who claimed to be city residents. It was kind of a self-reporting thing. Here are the takeaways from the survey. 72% actually did not feel that we had an availability problem with parking downtown. Only 28% are dissatisfied with the availability of parking. When asked to rate the condition of our off-street parking facilities, now this survey was done before we just dropped some beautiful new asphalt down in our city parking lot, but that was done for a reason. That parking lot, along with all of our off-street parking facilities, are overwhelmingly considered to be poor or very poor condition. Or fair, poor, or very poor. 58% rated them in those conditions. Not a majority, but a plurality when given 4 options for how to fund parking lot maintenance and improvements. 35.7% of city residents favored paid parking over the other options that they were given were state and federal grants. Now, those are very hard to come by for parking lots. I happen to have applied one for the City Beach parking lot. We're hoping to get that $600,000 Waterways Improvement Fund grant. Do not maintain them. In other words, just, lease them out to private developers, sell the properties, or city property taxes. So city property taxes are quite unpopular as a means of maintaining public parking facilities by city residents, but overwhelmingly county residents favored using city property taxes to maintain city parking facilities. Only 18.8% of non-city residents favored user fees. Okay, let city taxpayers pay for them. 41% of city residents said they would be willing to purchase a proposed parking pass, and 30% of non-city residents said they would be willing to buy a parking pass. So here are some changes that have been made since the April 15th. Oh, sorry, no, changes that were made leading up to the April 15th presentation to planning and zoning. And then I actually struck out one here because planning and zoning kind of shot this change down. They did not like this proposal, which I had included in the draft that I brought to them on April 15th. So the proposed time limits for the parking passes that are included in this plan are now 3 hours for city residents at the downtown lot and 6 hours at the waterfront lots, including City Beach and the Dock Street parking, and 2 hours at the downtown lot for non-city taxpayer pass holders, and 3 hours at the City Beach parking lot for non-city taxpayers. We're also proposing boat launch fees. We're one of the only counties actually that doesn't have public boat launch fees at this point. Kootenai County's rolled them out at county and city boat launches. This was actually a request from members of the Waterways Committee in Bonner County. I was encouraged to explore rolling out boat launch fees because boat launch fees provide very valuable revenue for maintaining boat launch facilities and public moorage. Downtown business and resident passes, $40 for businesses and employees is what I'm proposing, is $60 for residents. The proposal actually details what those passes would include, so I won't tell you what that is here. And then reintroduction of off-street parking requirements for residential development downtown, tying the amount of parking spaces required to square footage, and requiring, and that would require an ordinance amendment, which we actually workshopped at the planning and zoning meeting last night to Title IX, Chapter 5. And then limited curbside paid parking along those blocks that are in the orange and red zone. I'll show you a map here in a minute, what's included in that. Okay, this was the feedback I received at the April 15th PZC meeting. There was a proposal discussed with the Downtown Business Association to basically eliminate the 4-hour time limits and turn that into all-day parking. I think downtown businesses favored that because it meant their employees could park, all day a few blocks away from downtown and not worry about getting tickets. The commissioners worried that this would impact adjacent businesses in those zones who would see limited availability of parking in front of their businesses. And they also pointed out that, if you're giving them free parking 4 blocks away from town, what incentive do they have to buy a parking pass and contribute to the maintenance of our parking facilities? So that has been eliminated from the proposal that you were presented with tonight. The Planning and Zoning Commission had mixed feelings about the reintroduction of residential parking requirements downtown. There was some serious concern about the impact this might have on investment in the commercial core. And they did point out that our own analysis says that there's room for 300 additional cars during peak hour on street. So if we were to eliminate that exemption for all development within that parking exempt zone, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot by disincentivizing some investment that otherwise might come. The Planning Commission gave a big thumbs up, all of them, to reintroduce paid parking along some of our most congested downtown streets, to try to move those couple of blocks towards effective capacity and increase turnover, increase availability of parking so that customers at those businesses can come and go and not have to park 3 blocks away if they have to have a quick errand to run at a First Avenue or Second Avenue business. Okay, these are kind of the 3 pillars of the proposed parking management plan. You can read these. It's paid parking at the downtown and waterfront parking lots, parking passes for locals, a city taxpayer pass and a non-city taxpayer pass, a downtown employee and resident passes, marina slip holder passes, and then the reintroduction of off-street parking requirements. The details there are we are proposing 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet of residential development with a maximum of 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, and an in lieu fee of $25,000 per space if developers choose to pay into our parking improvement fund in lieu of providing off-street parking. The goal being to, one way or another, either the city government or the developer will be accounting for the eventual need to provide off-street parking. If we see a lot of investment over the next 10, 20 years, there's going to be a need for a parking structure downtown. And this would be a way for us to have a little nest egg to help pay for that eventually, assuming developers choose not to provide their own off-street parking. Okay, these are the blocks in purple or pink here that I would propose reintroducing paid parking on the streets. We had parking meters from 1947 through 1990 along these same blocks, actually. So we would really just be going back to an era when parking downtown was paid parking in this case. I'm not proposing any dollar amounts here. I want to keep flexibility in as far as what we charge on an hourly rate for parking. Let council decide that annually so that we can optimize utilization. It would be foolish to go in and say we're going to charge $3 an hour and then see these parking spaces underutilized, or go in and say we're going to charge 50 cents an hour and see the exact same over occupancy. We want to get it right. So the mayor's always talked about dynamic pricing and being able to adjust parking rates based on the actual level of demand. Okay, almost through with my presentation here. In addition, the ordinance amendment that we're working on, that we workshopped with planning and zoning last night, proposes expanding our parking exempt zone for non-residential development. So currently that yellow area, any development within that commercial area is required to provide off-street parking based on the tables in our zoning ordinances. We would recommend, because all of that is zoned commercial A, it's the same zoning as all that area currently in our parking exempt zone. We would propose expanding the non-residential parking exempt area to include that yellow area. Now, residential that's currently in that area would shift from the off-street parking requirements in our residential code to the off-street parking requirements that we're proposing for the commercial district, which is 1 space per 1,000 square feet of residential, as opposed to the way our code is written for outside of that area. It's like, for a 1-bedroom house, you have to provide X number of spaces, up to 2 spaces for a 4-bedroom house. So rather than tying to the number of bedrooms, we're proposing to tie into the total square footage, or pay in lieu, exactly. The rationale behind tying parking requirements to square footage is that it incentivizes smaller, more efficiency type housing. For example, a project that has 500 square foot units would only have to provide 1 parking space for every 2 units built, whereas a project that involved 1,500 square foot luxury condos would be required to provide 1.5 parking spaces per unit built. So it's in essence, providing a sort of subsidy for parking for more efficient workforce housing.
So Jason,
Yes.
excuse me, is all that white above the
Yep.
yellow, the exempt?
Currently,
Yes, okay.
all development within that outlined area, I should say all non-residential development within that outlined area is exempt from any parking
Okay.
requirements. And currently we have, I should have pulled it up, but we in your packet, actually,
Right.
you can see the current parking exempt zone for residential. So there's a smaller square within that in which all residential development is exempt from parking requirements.
And that's the area that you were proposing change.
We're basically getting rid of the residential parking exempt zone, and we're saying residential is required to provide parking or pay in lieu fees within this entire zone.
I have a question about what led you to choose that expanded boundary?
That's all commercial A zoning. Everything to the west and south of that is not commercial A. It's like mixed use residential or single family, or there's even some multifamily in there. So that was kind of an island of commercial A that wasn't part of the parking exempt zone. But it's very much, you've got Powder Hound Pizza down there. You've got some medical like eye clinic and things like that. You've got several undeveloped properties down there, and the parking requirement could be a disincentive to development within that zone. So bringing that in and providing the same benefit that all development within our parking exempt zone already enjoys just kind of made sense.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, Kyle, I assume you understand like the concept behind parking exemptions, right? The urban form, what are we trying to achieve as a city? We want to see denser urban development, not parking lots where otherwise there might be commercial or residential or other valuable uses. So.
Sure, absolutely. And the reason I ask is because it's my personal opinion that the off-ramp from the highway is not a great spot for dense urban development and walkability. So, I'm definitely open to this concept, but I just was curious why we chose one of the most dangerous places to be a pedestrian.
Yeah, especially now when there's no pedestrian facilities there.
Right. And most of the businesses in that area have off-street parking. Most of the developed properties have off-street parking. Powder Hound does. There's gas stations. Those are never going to be redeveloped into something in the urban form. You have several buildings that are owned by the county. They all have their own parking. A big portion of it is actually a big parking lot for the marina. So that was just why I was curious why we chose that expanded area.
Well, we write code for the 20 to 50-year horizon, not necessarily what is going to happen in the next 5 years.
And it makes sense that you just went with the boundaries of the commercial zone. Yeah, that makes sense.
And by no means would a property owner be expected to eliminate their existing parking. If they so chose to, they could.
Of course.
Do that in the future. Yeah. Okay, I'll get through this. I've got a few more slides here. So just some food for thought here. Little background, our parking exempt zone was adopted in 2009. There hasn't been much residential development since that time. Quite a lot of commercial investment. Of course, the mayor could tell you all about it. The We've got some of our most beloved local businesses exist today because of the parking exemption that Mayor Grimm put in place when he was the planning director. You know, you could look at the Hive,
Coachella,
the Panada, Coachava,
the Bellwoods,
Duff's,
the wi-
Bellwood Building,
the winery.
Dole's, Ponderay Winery. These are all projects that wouldn't have been possible if we had parking requirements downtown. So the whole idea behind the parking exemption is that it results in an urban form and allows for development patterns that would absolutely not be possible if we had these arbitrary parking requirements like lots of cities do, and lots of cities that none of us would probably want to live in because they're 70% asphalt parking lots or multi-levels parking garages.
And I'd also add that one of the kind of hidden benefits, let's take the Coachella building. That used to have a taxable valuation of roughly $300,000. With the parking exempt zone and those provisions, that modification improvement was able to go forward. That building's now valued at almost $4 million. And if you understand how our taxes work, the county assesses all of our property. So the more valuable, and then we divide that into our budget to get our levy rate, the more valuable our commercial and industrial properties are, they are absorbing more of our budget that comes through property taxes. So having a more valuable downtown and industrial area actually reduces the tax burden on our residents. Likewise, if we had a real estate crash and commercial was worthless downtown, we'd probably see our residential taxes go up significantly.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman Spiro.
One, we would still be there even without that situation. We were just getting molested for putting windows in a side room, so a little different. Why did Kuchava put a parking lot? Did they just want to?
They had the whole building. It's just that it's similar to Joel's Restaurant. When you change a use, for Coachava, it was going from their upper floor was formerly storage to office. They would have had to provide a set number. Typically, cities look at the ITE manual on how much parking is required.
But they still put a parking lot.
It was already there. They just
chose to keep, okay.
they just refurbished their building.
I don't remember, right?
Yeah, they refurbished that building, adding offices to the second floor.
Yeah. In our particular case, we just wanted to put windows in in that side room.
Yeah, you wanted to close in that. Your dad actually testified during that hearing. And
Right.
I remember the conversation with Don Carter, our building director. He said, Jeremy, we've got a problem. Can't let Joel open his new room because it requires 3 parking spots per table.
Right.
And we came up with a creative solution of, well, don't put windows in because then it's considered outdoor seating, and outdoor seating doesn't require parking. And then we got the provisions eliminated and the windows could.
Yeah, I just keep hearing us use an example, like we wouldn't be there if it were for.
Oh, yeah,
that.
no,
That's-
words matter.
still be
No,
there. Be a little different.
you would have,
We'd still be there.
outdoor seating.
Yeah.
Unconditioned.
Yeah, would have found a way. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, some questions that we've considered on the planning team as we've worked on this plan. What kind of development will we see in the years ahead? You know, commercial creates more demand during those peak hours, whereas residential development creates like a base level of demand. You're going to see cars on the street overnight. You're going to see parking spaces and parking lots occupied overnight when we see more residential development downtown. Or in the case of much of the residential development, you know, something to point out, eliminating minimum parking requirements by no means guarantees. In fact, it definitely doesn't guarantee that future development will not include parking. It just means it's not the city telling developers how much parking they have to provide. It's really up to private developers to determine what their private demand for parking is going to be. And of course, any project that includes dedicated parking spaces dramatically increases the value and the price of that real estate, or not the real estate, but whatever product that it is that they're developing. If it's a residential unit, if you get a parking space or 2 when you buy a condo downtown, are you going to be willing to pay more for that than one without parking? Absolutely. So, but that's a decision that we are basically leaving up to developers in this case. The return of the parking requirements for residential development just acknowledges that there is a future in which we expect to experience parking strain downtown. We have to prepare for that because the burden of providing parking is being placed on the city through the parking exempt zone, but we currently don't have any balance in our parking improvement fund really that could put any dent in a multi-level parking structure downtown. So will additional parking be needed? If so, where could it go? There's not really room to expand street parking unless we perhaps introduce some street parking on Fifth Avenue north of Cedar Street, where we actually have plenty of room for it, but that's kind of an ITD decision. A structured parking garage at the city lot. Speaking of Helen Newton, the police chief sent me a week or two ago a survey that she conducted. You mentioned Helen's city council surveys, in which back in 2007, 58% of city residents believed that a parking garage at the 3rd and Church Street lot would be needed someday. That was 20 years ago. I think probably a greater percentage of Sandpoint residents would say that we're going to need that someday as well. But in order to get that, we have to have a way to pay for it. And in lieu fees and parking fees are how you pay for parking, period. The cost of that, probably around $10 million for a 3-level parking structure at the city parking lot. Okay. All right, now this is your chance to weigh in on some of these things. I put together some questions that I would love to hear some of your responses to. The goal here is to, let me put the timeline up really quick. The goal here is to have a final draft of this for you for the June 18th City Council meeting. Meanwhile, we're working with the Planning and Zoning Commission on the ordinance amendment to Title IX, Chapter 5. There's actually quite a lot of changes to that ordinance that would eventually come to you at a July meeting for adoption. If a parking management plan is adopted and paid parking is included in that plan by this body, then my estimate is that over the summer, we would look for contractors to implement a parking management plan, and maybe by next summer, we could have paid parking in some of our city parking lots to solve some of these inefficient utilization challenges that we absolutely know exist on our downtown parking facilities. So back to the questions I have for you. I just pulled out 3. There's actually a whole lot more objectives from our comprehensive plan that relate to this effort. These are 3 of them: enhance access to businesses, shops, restaurants, and other destinations through parking management solutions. That's Chapter 6, Goal 1. Ensure efficient public parking is to enable redevelopment of underutilized properties. That's Chapter 9, Goal 5. And then explore alternatives to parking requirements to encourage a variety of housing types for a broad spectrum of income levels and age groups. That's Chapter 5, Goal F. And there are a whole lot more in our comp plan relating to this challenge of efficiently managing our downtown parking. So feel free to respond to any of these questions, or ask me any questions, or ask Bill any questions. He's been instrumental in helping work on this. Bill's drafted the ordinance that we've been workshopping with council. So big thanks to Bill and all of his experience and expertise with similar challenges in other cities.
Thank you, Director Welker. Thank you, Bill. Council, this is a passion of mine. I have a few of parking is absolutely fascinating to me. One of the things that Director Welker didn't mention is, and it's kind of in question 3 here, is the revenue. You know, we've just applied for a long shot for a grant to repave the city beach parking lot. I want to make sure that future councils have a enduring, sustainable revenue source to maintain what we have and keep it looking proud and looking respectable. If this were to succeed, future councils would have the ability to direct that parking meter or parking revenue to the downtown business core. It could relieve the general fund of things like the flower baskets. It could potentially offer sidewalk plowing and street plowing, or sidewalk plowing and removal. We could do a lot of things. It could sponsor events. There's just so many ways where the revenue from a parking district can go back to continually benefit the district where that parking is. So, yeah, I go back to, at some point, we'll need a parking garage. You need, Jason didn't use these words, but you need stress to ensure that you drive, users into that garage so they'll actually pay, so you can pay your debt service on it. So with that, council members, I know you have some questions. There are some members of the public who would like the opportunity to speak. I would love to just interrupt our thoughts right now, just so we can have a chance to hear from any members of the public who've been patiently waiting. If there's no objection, I will proceed. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up would like to speak to this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, one moment. Mike Delay? Mr. Delay?
Good evening, Mr. Delay. Thanks for joining our meeting tonight.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to commend all of you. I can see a lot of time has gone into this and a lot of input, perhaps from a lot of people. So, I mean, you guys are putting in a lot of time and you're always under scrutiny and you're always sometimes justifiably, but many times unjustifiably, criticized. So I look at all this input and I think, wow, whoever's criticizing ought to show up here and get an education.
And Mr. Delay, could you just either give us your background or let us know if you're a city resident?
Yeah, so I'm on Pine Street, and the reason I'm here is to focus purely on one aspect, which is I think the expanding of the commercial exempt area that he had on the board there, the zone there. I'm not sure if I use all the words right, but why I'm here is to say you guys have done an awesome job keeping Sandpoint small businesses energized. How do you know that? Well, look at Pond Array. If you want a lot of blacktop and big boxes, go to Pond Array. If you want a lot of asphalt and parking lots, go to Pond Array. You guys, over the past, since 2009 or whenever that thing got amended or changed, have kept small businesses down in Sandpoint. Small businesses aren't Walmarts. They aren't, Home Depots or Office Depots. They're the Joels. They're the 113s. They're the Forge Pizzas, the Arlo's, it goes on and on. And to me, that makes Sandpoint so much more desirable. So I say to you guys, however you enhance that and make that possible and continue that, I'm all for. I don't like to show up in a city where you just see blacktop, where you see, parking lots. And I think that by what you've done here in the city of Sandpoint, by expanding the commercial non-exempt, you've really energized your small business. How many people like walkability? How many people like pedestrians? How many people like bikes? I think we all do. How many people prefer those over parking lots or cars? I think we all do. It doesn't mean you're not going to have parking. Don't misunderstand me, but any way you can incentivize and really drive your small business, which you've done and keep doing, that's a win-win. The people like, the Burn Cloud cafes and the newer businesses, the Forge Pizzas, in my opinion, they come at very minimal monetary cost to the city or the citizens, meaning there is not a cost associated with the city, but there's a huge benefit to the city. How many people want to come to those? Lots. How many people would choose to park a little ways away to walk there? A lot.
Thank you, Mr. Delay. If you could summarize and finish
Yes,
up.
I'll summarize. So anyway, thank you all for doing such a great job. I'm very impressed. I think your city's beautiful. I'm part of it, so keep doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delay.
Tim Bowden.
Sitting for a while.
Good evening.
I did a bike ride before I came, so been eating Cliff Bars. Tim Bowden, I am not a resident, but I own property and I have a business in Sandpoint for the last 40 years plus. So I guess first of all, Jason, great presentation. Bill, thanks for all the help. I know you're part of it. Mayor Grimm, I know you're part of that presentation. I just kind of wanted to hear what was going to be presented, so that was really my reason for being here. But I was pleasantly surprised. I do think I would support that residential wrinkle that you're putting back in. I think commercial without parking is a good situation for the core area, but we've done a few projects downtown and they've always had parking associated with the residential. And I think that's good to have into the code. Just because we are doing it or other people are doing it doesn't mean they have to do it. And so this would actually require that. So that was pretty much my only comment for the presentation. Great job, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bowden.
That is all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council, back to you. Any questions for Director Welker? You can choose to ask him tonight. You can get back to him in the coming days or weeks as you digest this. It looks like we're on a track. I would love to see us come to a conclusion and potentially look at a potential adoption at some point in the summer so we can start moving forward with parking policy and fee schedule. So fire away if you have questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Council President.
I just had one quick question. You can give a brief response. If it needs to be more lengthy, I can come see you. I was curious about the 24-hour parking piece for the slips and Dock Street for people who, can you explain that?
Yeah.
Well, I don't understand
So-
why 24 hours. I'm confused.
Well, we all have friends who have boats. Some of us have boats. I wish I had a boat. But you know, what happens when I go out to the Green Monarchs and camp for a night? Am I gonna get a parking ticket if I stay overnight? So having a marina slip holder pass that allows for 24-hour parking at the boat launch parking lot made sense. Whereas there's otherwise not, overnight parking allowed at that facility. And you wouldn't be paying the hourly rate if you had a marina slip holder pass. So I'm proposing a fee of, I think, $150 for that marina slip holder pass that gets you unlimited all day, all night parking at the Dock Street and City Beach parking lot. But you have to be a marina slip holder to get that pass.
150 a year, right?
150 for the year, yeah. And people don't have to buy one of those if if you're a Sandpoint resident who rides their bike. Dave and Heather ride their bikes to their boat 9 times out of 10. I've actually talked to my friends about this, and even now they can't find parking at City Beach when they go, so they drive their van down, unload their equipment, and then go park their van at the house and ride their bikes back. We would actually just be encouraging that, if people didn't want to spend the $150, okay, just
Yeah, that's
ride
fine.
your bike to your boat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I actually got a similar question from somebody who does not normally have a slip at Windbag, and so I was gonna ask, what about people who have used the boat launch, have paid to use the boat launch, and are now paying 2 times per hour when they want to go out to the Monarchs or whatever they're doing for 24 hours? Is that lot even gonna be open overnight to them?
Yeah, good question. So that's something we probably have to work out with the police chief. Like currently, our city code doesn't allow parking at City Beach between 11 PM and 4 AM. As far as I understand, that's not regularly enforced. But, especially if there's a hotel project going on and we wouldn't want hotel guest parking at City Beach overnight, that's something you could direct police to start enforcing. You don't want hotel guests using the City Beach parking lot, just issue tickets or tow them if they're parked overnight.
Or we could make overnight very expensive.
Possibly. But sorry, what was your question again? So, yeah, typically with these hourly parking fees, there's a maximum you can pay in a day. So if you stay, it's like you pay for up to 8 hours and then you get the rest of the day free. So it might be a $16 max or something for the day. So if someone were to launch a boat at City Beach and then spend 12 hours or whatever out on the lake or overnight, they'd pay for they wouldn't pay beyond 8 hours, if that's the number that council chose, whatever that limit is. But you're paying, like, let's say it's $2 an hour for up to 8 hours, and then you don't pay beyond that. I don't know when it resets. I don't want to get too much into like, how does the technology work? I don't really know how all the technology works, but any system we implement, this would all be like worked out with the provider of that technology. If you're there for 36 hours, how many hours do you actually pay for? I don't know the answer to that right now, but that would be solved through the technology, I believe.
Yeah, and just to chime in super quick, looked at a technology last week that's a camera on a parking meter that actually sends the app whether there's only any open spots there. So it knows that there's 2 spots open on First or at the beach, and it reads the license plate. It knows if you have a permit because it's registered in its system based on your license plate, and it automatically just bills you, or you can walk up and key in your time, or you can pay on your app, or if you stay there for 2 days, it's going to just bill you 2 days at the maximum day. And finally, I just was in Coeur d'Alene last week and paid $19 for 4 hours of parking at a Coeur d'Alene parking lot, not on the water. City owned.
That's a lot.
Yeah, one day, 4 hours.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Duquette.
Just quick points. Somebody builds a big public parking structure that's supporting people to drive downtown. To me, that's just asking for more traffic downtown, my comment. On the marina slip, people for $150, will their places be marked so nobody takes their spot?
No, and we can't do that anyway
okay.
because of the LWCF regulations that govern the whole of the Dock Street and the City Beach parking lots. Same reason we can't give parking spaces to a hotel. It's actually forbidden by the federal agreement that we're under. So no, there's no privatization of parking spaces, period. And trust me, in this process, I've had marina slip holders and, you know, other stakeholders who have interest in the marina down there say, you should be giving dedicated parking spaces for people who have boat slips included with our boat slip. Okay, I'm very thankful the Land Water Conservation Fund forbids that. I also think it's quite offensive that people think that because they have a boat slip, they should get a private parking space at City Beach, but
Well, if
I've had people propose that.
They're paying $150 so that they can spend the night out on their boat. They
Yeah.
should have a
Just know, like,
place.
this parking is for marina slip holders.
Only, right.
We can't
okay.
do that in our agreement. Because that's exclusive. You can't exclude any members of the public from using those parking spaces.
And it talked in your packet about the Farman's Landing development. That'd be a loss of 30 stalls if that's a plaza. Is that a conflict there?
Well, there's currently no plan.
Go,
at
it said.
least- Well, we do have a Parks Master Plan that shows a development there, which I think reduces the number of parking stalls to 20 or so.
Study in 22 said loss of 30 stalls.
Oh,
We have no
Lots of-
viable way to fund that dream. I'm just letting you know right now.
And
Yeah.
because it is a bike route. through
Yeah,
there.
in 2022, when the parking study was done, we had recently adopted the Parks Master Plan, which had a concept for Farman's Landing that saw, like, you know,
Yeah.
building out into the creek, a little
Right.
pavilion area and fewer parking stalls, but actually the plan the one that's adopted does include parking stalls. It's just fewer than the 30 that we have currently.
I like you using city taxpayers instead of residents.
Yeah.
Just
that's
that,
key.
that's easier for people
I learned that for sure, yeah.
to see.
Words matter.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, I'm of course wanting parking out of town, biking, walking, no concrete. But we can talk.
Director Welker, do you have a rough number? I won't hold you to it. I don't think anyone will, but without the on-street meters, what kind of revenue would you expect this to?
In fact, early on in this process, I used the occupancy levels that we currently see during that peak summer month and then adjusted them seasonally. I love numbers, so I did a lot of like attempt to estimate. And based on like a $2 an hour approximate fee at the parking lots alone, not including any paid street parking, I estimated around $330,000 in parking revenue for just the parking lots downtown. And that's not based on trust me, that was not assuming, you know, 83% occupancy year round. That was adjusting seasonally to much lower, something like 5% occupancy in the winter at City Beach is what I assumed. So yeah, my estimation is that with paid street parking as well, and depending on what rates council settles on and, you know, how many parking passes we sell and how many resident passes we sell, this is easily going to be a $300,000 to $500,000 a year revenue source for the city. I mean, I don't want to promise that, but
No, thank you.
In a lot of the research I've done, cities that implemented paid parking vastly outperformed financially what they estimated they would.
Facebook will
That's a
hold me to
block.
those numbers.
No one's watching.
That's a block of pavement a
No
year.
one's watching this.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilman
Okay,
Dick.
so a couple of basic questions I just want to get out because I hear them all the time in the public. Some of the stuff I can talk to you about at a later date, but can you explain why we could only charge non-residents and not Sandpoint residents? And also,
Yes, I
why couldn't we just charge 7B residents? Or not charge 7B residents, right? And allow all of non-7B residents to pay?
Well, first of all, not all 7B residents are city taxpayers. So if our goal here is to let the users of the facilities help pay for them, in fact, I'd venture to guess that the vast majority of people who use our public parking lots are not city of Sandpoint residents, because we have options for getting downtown. I know Councilwoman Duquette never drives downtown. She would never be caught dead in a car downtown. And there's a lot of people like that. So
Buy and Wine, the
um,
winery.
if we say all 7B should be treated equally, well, that's absolutely not true. I mean, just factually, like all city residents are paying at least $1,000, $1,000.
I'm looking at my tax bill right now. I have the privilege of paying $2,108 to be the privilege of a city resident, which goes to subsidizing and paying for that. So, I think it's a valid question, Councilman Dick, and I've seen a lot of the discussions, but there's a misunderstanding. I have a lot of education to do to the general public, our community, our county residents, friends, neighbors, relatives. They do contribute to our community. We are one community, but the hard, cold facts of paying for asphalt and staff are that city of Sandpoint taxpayers foot the bill for that. And as an example, one comment I saw, somebody said they spent $3,000 at the stores downtown. That equates to $9 back to the city in 6% sales tax once the distribution takes place. So it's really a question do the city residents want to subsidize and pay for, the maintenance and replacement of these facilities?
Great, thank you. I figure we needed to get that out and have that on the record here, because I think that's what we hear the most, at least coming into my businesses. Secondly, the survey data shows that we have roughly 72% of those that took it, resident and non-resident, don't see that we have a parking problem, right? I think with the development of the city parking lot right now being closed, there was no issues parking anywhere. Okay? When I was down 17 years down at City Beach, we had no parking issues with the exception of July 1st till Labor Day weekend, right? Was there a thought about doing paid seasonal parking only for maybe, Memorial Day until Labor Day, July until Labor Day, and keeping free parking with the exception of the city parking lot paid? Because I think the businesses, from my work with the Sandpoint Shopping District, we are excited about the new lot and not having a problem with paying for using the city lot, as well as our employees will not mind getting a parking pass there or going and parking somewhere else to be able to do it. But is this something that we have to make year round when we really only have this peak season of maybe 60 to 75 days?
Jason, I can start and let you finish. So Councilman Dick, this idea of dynamic pricing, with the technology available today in these parking meters, you can actually set it to drive the rates based on the occupancy of the lot. So not only would it potentially not be seasonal, just during, in larger urban areas, just during high intensity events, the rates can be changed and go up. If there's only one spot left, that spot's going to be $4 an hour.
Gotcha.
So I believe that through technology, we could look at reducing the fees during seasonal time for meters, and potentially at these city lots and the beach lot. But keep in mind, we're talking about a possible annual fee of $13. This is like, I'm not sure anyone would, I mean, I know it's $13, but for a year to park for 6 hours.
One observation as well, Justin, just in response to that. There is let's assume a couple of years from now, there is a new hotel and conference center at City Beach. The conference season is the shoulder season, and we know this, most big conferences are in April and October. If there were a 350-person conference with people driving from out of state, would we want to let them all park for free at City Beach when nobody else is using City Beach? Why not collect revenue from use of our empty parking facilities during those unusual, off-season events? So, yeah, we could, but do we want to give free parking to, out-of-town guests who are there for a conference at the hotel when otherwise that parking lot would just be empty?
No, good response. Lastly, there's a couple things I'll talk to you about in private down there, but in terms of City Beach, but in the RV park, the in lieu fees and potential revenue that we take in from the parking. With my time with Spot Bus now, I think it would behoove us to carve out a percentage of the money in terms of the in lieu fees and/or the parking management, in addition to what we're already bookmarking for Spot. Spot is a rather cheap date. It's about $150,000. And we will have a larger conversation with Donna and everybody here coming up, and we'll present to the council as well too. But it's really Sandpoint that's not paying their fair share of the ridership right now. We've seen a number of developments, Ridley Village Court, as well as Averill just came over to us. We've had conversations about putting bus stops over there. You know, everybody thinks that Spot can just up and change their fixed routes and put in a bus stop over there. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars of changes, as well as time constraints, right? When the bus goes by the school in the morning and it's 10 minutes late, we lose ridership everywhere along those paths that get there. We know that it's getting more challenging to cut aside money out of the budget to be able to fund for Spot. But I think Spot checks all the boxes in terms of keeping parking open in our community as well. And I think the in lieu of fees would be fantastic to do so.
I would just comment that by our own code right now, in lieu fees must be allocated to the parking improvement fund, which is very defined as far as what it can be used for. But parking revenues, one of the most common uses that other cities put parking revenues towards is transit.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I mean, if that's something council decides, you're not gonna hear any resistance from me.
Councilman Dick, you're speaking my love language. I think that is a exceptional idea for use of some of the parking revenue.
One last thing. When are we supposed to hear back about the City Beach grant?
June 18th.
June 18th. Okay.
We'll be monitoring my email all morning.
Might I give just one thought to at least look into here? We've got this goose that's laying the golden egg with the city RV lot, right? Our second largest Parks and Rec revenue generator. That was also slated at one time to take the trucks and the trailers out of City Beach, right? We've kind of went away from that. We're not going to dredge. We're not going to change where the boat launch is, but we could still use that for trucks and trailers. That would open up approximately 70 parking spaces down at City Beach. Might we consider a timetable of using that money or storing some of that money at the RV park if we don't get the grant, right? Put a time limit on it. We're going to do 5 years or 500,000 or whatever that might be, and use that money to redo the parking lot and then move the trucks and trailers over to that parking lot.
Councilman Dick, I think that's certainly a good aspiration. I would personally want to do a quick financial analysis on cost benefit of trailer versus RV. The RVs obviously add a very direct benefit of people walking and being in our downtown, where some of the boats come from outside of the area and just park and go back to Spokane. But yeah, I think I'm totally open to that. So I'd like to see some numbers and have Jason do some forecasting. Councilman Schreiber, do you have some questions?
I do. I'm trying not to throw them all at you at once, but I did have one question about the dynamic pricing because you mentioned it. So I couldn't quite tell from the staff report if we were talking about prices being changed once a year when we update our fee schedule. What you made it sound like is that it might change within the time that someone is parked at the lot, which could be a problem for, say, a local worker who pulls in thinking they're going to pay $2 an hour and comes back and finds it's $10 an hour,
Right.
and they didn't make any money today.
Right.
So
Good question, Councilman Schreiber. And the technology is very flexible. Some areas have seen it, you pay your fee when you park and it's set. As parking spaces become scarce, the fee rises in real time. So the technology has broad flexibility for you to implement it many ways. Again, this is moving on to the parking actually fee plan, which is a separate step of sort of the parking policy. And I think we have some research to do once we enter into that stage of this, but to set the fees, how we're going to do it, what technology we're going to use, where they're going to be. But yeah, it's very flexible.
Sure. I know that this is still up in the air, given that we haven't chosen a technology yet, but I do want to express concern that other places that have brought in third-party vendors to manage their parking for them have ended up giving almost all of that revenue to the third-party vendor. So as we move forward with this, in fact, I'd be hesitant to move forward with it unless we had confidence that we were going to get the lion's share of that money and it wasn't just somebody basically making money off of our public resource.
I'm 100% with you. Yep.
I have a couple more if you want me to just go ahead and shoot or.
Sure.
So one of the things I was confused about in the staff report, it lists the Sand Creek lot and the Bridge Street lot and the Dock Street lot. Which is
Bridge Street is that 31 or 32 car lot right before you go underneath the BNSF Railway to City Beach.
then what's the Sand Creek lot?
Sand Creek is Farman's Landing behind.
Oh,
behind
okay, Farman's Landing. Got it.
Coffee.
Okay.
I would have always referred to it as Farman's Landing, but the parking study
Gunnings
referred
Alley.
to it as the Sand Creek lot.
Yeah, I would have called it Gunnings Alley, but thank you for clearing that up. Let's see here. I was curious, and this is kind of a bigger conversation about businesses versus residents, and you kind of touched on it, the residents being the base demand versus a business being a peak demand. And it seems to me in other places that I've visited that oftentimes residents leave during the day and go to work somewhere and they abandon their parking space during the day and then they come back and occupy that parking space all night while the businesses are closed. And in some aspects that leads to a more efficient use of the parking availability. Like all of the demand studies that we have are at noon, none of them are at midnight, right? And so we can all, probably imagine that there's ample parking in the middle of the night. And so it was interesting to me that the resident pass is actually more expensive than the business pass.
Are you familiar with the concept of elasticity? The demand for resident passes, I expect to be, price inelastic. People who live downtown and don't have an off-street parking space, they're going to have to buy a parking pass. And this is actually what the market price of parking passes are downtown right now. We had several business owners tell us that they're paying $60 or more a month for a dedicated parking space in a lot downtown right now. Whereas the employee parking pass, those are very much optional, right? I mean, an employee could carpool, ride the bike. If you live downtown, you need a parking space downtown.
Sure.
So, thinking about how we can maximize our revenue as a city and also reflect the fact that if you're a downtown resident, you need a parking space. So every city I've lived in, I should say 2 of the cities I lived in my 20s, I had to park on the street. And if I didn't have a resident parking pass, I would get towed. So I had to buy a parking pass to park on the street because there was no off-street parking in where I lived in those cities. So it was just everybody who lives in town has to buy a parking pass basically, unless you have off-street parking dedicated for your unit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks for answering that.
And Councilman Schreiber, on the base demand, did you happen to see my editorial I wrote in the papers last week?
I did.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about is the base demand. Once the businesses go home, having that base level of residents' heartbeats downtown that are going to be visiting the stores, going to the third places, the coffee shops, the entertainment venues. You build that out and your downtown becomes more vibrant and active because you have that base load of people in your downtown. It's not vacant after 5:30.
Yeah, and I've seen some small towns like ours. It's not necessarily just big cities. Everybody says, "Oh, we don't want to be like New York City," but I've actually been to a lot of small towns around the West that were built in the same era as our downtown, and almost every downtown business has an apartment upstairs, and oftentimes they were relatively affordable and workforce housing. So I support that, and because of that, I'm struggling a little bit with this code change to restrict residential or to add a residential minimum. On one hand, if you add a giant development all in one block, well, of course, there's not going to be enough street parking for everybody who lives there. But if you were to add 1 or 2 apartments above every block in downtown, like I said, most of those people are at work all day. They come home right as the office staff are leaving. So it's almost like they can trade spots. And I've seen it happen in other towns like ours, not just big cities, but but small towns that were built in the same era as ours. So I'm struggling a little bit with the idea that on one hand, I do think we need to remedy the residential code and prevent a couple big developments from blowing up our parking situation and forcing our hand much sooner than we would otherwise have to. On the other hand, it seems like 1 or 2 units per property might not actually cause as big of a problem. And I don't know how we would write a code to
And you,
say
and you
that.
could get more infill that way. You could, it's basically an incentive to do onesie twosies.
Yeah.
I think you could set it to the residential parking exemption only qualifies for X number of units or less on a parcel or in a project or on a building.
Yeah.
And Councilman Schreiber, there's actually a lot of analysis that I didn't include in your staff packet tonight, one of which Bill inspired me to look into. Bill's always pushing, like, you got to find the numbers. One of the numbers I wanted to know was if we have a $25,000 per space in lieu fee. First of all, what you're describing, like if someone wants to redevelop a second floor apartment on First Avenue that's been sitting vacant for 50 years and turn it into housing, there's like no chance they're going to have a parking space for that unit. What are they going to, and we're going to go to put a parking space on First Avenue.
Yeah.
There's no off-street parking opportunities. They will have to pay the in lieu fee.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not saying you have to build a parking spot. If you're building 1,000 square foot apartment upstairs, you're going to have to pay us $25,000 so that the city can provide a parking spot for you sometime in the future. So the question Bill asked me was, well, what's the percentage of the total cost of development if you're charging a $25,000 in lieu fee? And I have a whole spreadsheet I'd be happy to share with you, but it came out to around 7%. So if you're going to build something from scratch or redevelop a completely gutted, second floor apartment or something, the total cost that you're putting into that renovation, that $25,000 comes out to around 7%. Or if it's 2 spaces you have to provide and you're building out 2,000 square feet, it's around 7%. So it's not nothing, but it's acknowledging the fact that that cost is going to be borne by the community in one way or another. If you're paying the city now, we at least have a nest egg so that we can bear that cost on your dime in the future rather than placing that cost on the rest of Sandpoint's taxpayers.
That's
easy to do that. It would be easy.
So Bill also has informed me that he could write that code amendment that you just requested in his sleep tonight.
nice. I like to hear it.
Doing it instead.
And I would just, go back to the point that oftentimes the person in that apartment might be using those parking spots at a time when when there isn't a demand for parking, so that it's actually possibly the commercial that's driving the need for more parking, not the residential, provided that we don't flood it all on one block, right? If it's dispersed throughout downtown, it might not be that big of a concern. Let me see what else I have here.
Councilman Dick or Sparrowway, Councilman Shriver's getting together. Do either of you have employees who don't have cars or don't drive?
Yep.
All of ours drive. We do
You
have-
say yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, we do. We've got employees at Jalapenos and 113 that don't drive.
Yeah, all of ours drive unless they're, a little bit younger, their parents drop them off. We also have a parking lot as well, so that's helpful.
Did you have others, Councilman Shriver?
I do, yeah. So looking at that parking study in your presentation, it was pretty drastic, the difference between the off-street parking at the downtown lot and the on-street parking just right next door. And I've seen that firsthand where I pulled up to South Fork Lumber and pulled up next to a full parking lot and had 3 empty spots. I don't even have to reverse into the spot. I can just pull right in and pull right out. So that's obviously because the street parking has a time limit and the parking lot does not. It occurs to me that, people are kind of resistant to big drastic changes, and perhaps, something as simple as putting a time limit on that parking lot could accomplish a similar goal without having to reinvent the wheel. I do think that meters on First and Cedar are a great idea, because that is obviously the spot where where there is a lack of parking and we could benefit from more turnover, but
So the issue is that the parking lot has become the de facto all-day parking space for downtown employees.
Mhm.
So if we put a 3-hour, 2-hour time limit in the parking lot, we definitely succeed in increasing turnover and making it easier for downtown shoppers to access that parking lot. But now you've got the 2-hour shuffle going on all the blocks where employees are running out of their place of work to move their car every 2 or 3 hours. So
But we
that's
have
why
a parking pass.
so you're saying, oh, so the parking pass is good on street parking, but not the parking lot now?
Well, it said 3 to 4 hour
Right.
parking, right? Which would include that off-street
But that
parking. at
includes the
point.
parking lot as well. So the downtown employee parking pass would get you all-day parking at the parking lots or the 3 and 4 hour zones, not the 2-hour zones, because we want to maintain turnover there.
Mhm.
So that's the proposal. But if we put or are you saying for non-pass holders, put a time limit on the city parking lot instead of doing paid parking at the city parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Might be a simpler path to the same.
The challenge there becomes enforcement. You've got to have community resource officers enforcing that all day to keep that turnover happening. Having a kiosk where you enter your license plate number or it scans your license plate if you're a pass holder, it's all automated then. And we're missing out on revenue in that case as well. So there's enforcement challenges without the revenue if you timed parking. Greater cost, less revenue. Just an idea.
Yeah, and this is still early, these kinds of details. I mean, if you consider the parking policy at a high level, we're at 30,000 feet. Trying to get the policy adopted, then we'll go into the details of where you want to see it. We'll come up with a whole parking plan, pricing, technology, et cetera.
Yeah, I did just have two more quick things and I'll pass the mic. But yeah, number one was where should we spend that money? And I think it really is really important that we do spend it where people can see it. You know, unfortunately, we just spent a whole lot of money to redo Cedar and First because that would have been a great way to incentivize people to or to show people the fruit of the parking, because that's typically how other cities do it. Is there's, you know, small parking improvement districts where the meter revenue from that block is used on that block. And I think, again, First and Cedar are the prime spots for meters. So unfortunately, we've already
Improve them, yeah.
improved them. So we can't say, oh, this is why we did paid parking. But it's also part of an urban renewal, which has been sucking money out of our general fund for a decade or more. So, you know, perhaps paying that money back in isn't a bad thing. I would just reiterate, you know, I think I'm on board with this code amendment for the residential, but I think we should just keep the boundary where it is now.
Okay. While you're speaking, I did pull up the 2007 Helen Newton parking survey.
Helen Newton, Michael Bogue, just to
Michael
be.
Bogue and Helen Newton collaborated on this. 79% of people in 2007, you had to buy a parking pass to park at the downtown parking lot, and it was $25 adjusted for inflation. That's around $40. 79% felt that was reasonable. 10% felt it was too low. 18 years ago, so we had paid parking both. Well, at the downtown parking lot, we had paid parking until 2016.
Was that when it went away?
2016, it was removed. Yeah, we're really bringing it back. And by the way, we didn't have any money to help improve it this year, which is why we had to use Sura dollars to do that whole parking lot. There's the parking structure. 64% of respondents to this survey believed a parking structure would be needed. The only place people really favored doing that was at the city lot location. People didn't really favor putting a parking lot or a parking garage at City Beach.
And just for historical.
Likewise, I would be opposed to that.
Historical context, not to belabor this, if you were here in 2007, the then Intermountain Community Bank, now Umpqua Bank, Sandpoint Center, was getting approved. And they were minutes away from building a parking structure on the corner of Pine and Fifth. That's a lot there. They had the full design, multi-story parking structure, and at the end of the day, we were able to relieve some of their parking requirements, but someday.
And the parking lot that sits there now is 10% occupied during peak hour.
And whose is that? Is that
It's owned by the owners of the Umpqua Bank building.
because nobody's ever there?
No.
That was a failure of pre-parking exempt zone ordinances that required that entire corner to be turned into an unused parking lot.
That's what the parking manual says they need for that building.
I have to say, it's very frustrating in the winter when I slipping and sliding down an unplowed sidewalk next to a perfectly plowed empty parking lot.
Just walk through the parking lot.
Council members, we have one more item tonight. So is there any other action or questions, or you can visit with staff independently on this?
I just had a quick one. Maybe it is for together, Jason, but with the pass holder for the boat slip, if there's a husband and wife, and is the pass just going to be on their one license plate, or
That's a good question. It would-
just something to consider? They
Yeah,
both have access.
maybe depending on the technology, you could associate it with two license plates, like or like a household pass that could be, I don't know.
Just a
That's-
thought, like if I have one
It's
of
a
my
good
wife picks
recommendation.
me
It's a
up.
good recommendation, yeah.
Just a thought I had. So
Yeah.
we can talk stuff privately. So.
I mean, maybe it's possible to do that with all parking passes, so there's per household instead of per car.
Yeah.
I just don't know what the technology
Yeah,
allows.
because somebody, like I commend Pam and Kyle, see them walking all the time.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids. It's not always that easy,
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm driving, my wife's picking me up. So yeah, something to consider.
Yeah.
Council members, thank you so much for your diligence and thought on this subject. It's one that is squarely in the community's eye and forefront. Appreciate your thought and consideration, and thanks staff for just an exceptional, long body of work you've been putting together on this. Hearing no further comments at this time, I will move to bring back item number 10 from the consent agenda. Approval of city comments of Bonner County regarding Deerfield subdivision application as an action item, and Councilman Howarth has recused himself on this item. So Councilman Howarth, at this time, we're just going to conclude the meeting after it. So you can step down and sit in the audience, or you can depart and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Howarth.
Actually,
No more
Nice
accusing.
try.
Okay, with that, staff, do you have anything to present on this, or is it just a straight up staff report? And just pull that one back up, excuse me.
Put the staff report on the screen. This was Bill's effort, so I think we'll open up to any questions that council has for Bill about the staff report.
Bill, can you give us just I know we've read the staff report, just super quick summary of
Sure.
making a recommendation to the county with.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Well, good night now. It's Bill Dean, City Planner, for the record. We received an application referral from the county a few weeks ago regarding a proposed subdivision that's on Baldy, just to the west of city-owned property. Being in the area of city impact, we're afforded the opportunity to forward comments on to the county for their consideration. Of course, it's really important to remember this is a project that's located in Bonner County. Bonner County has sole authority over the decision-making of the subdivision. Yet, when asking around City Hall, what's been the custom in the past, a little bit of hit and miss. Sometimes these things go to City Council, sometimes they don't. So I thought, since it was adjacent to city-owned property and it's a relatively large project of over 30 acres, I thought it'd be prudent to at least put it on consent. And I take responsibility for the idea of putting it on consent. I want to tell you why. It's because when it's on consent, that means you can talk about it if you want to, but you don't have to. When it's a regular item, we're sort of forced into having the dialogue. And I just wasn't sure if this is something that would garner your interest or not. So we did put a little bit of work into looking at this as if it, from the vantage point of our comprehensive plan says, and came up with a few suggestions. So the way the staff report was structured was, upon acceptance of this, those comments would be sent on to Bonner County for their consideration, which they may or may not accept. One of them related to basically acknowledging the fact that this property is adjacent to city-owned lot. It's actually owned by utility. It's used for a disc golf course, as you're aware. There's been a 3-year lease entered into with a group that runs that. I think it sunsets, I think, in 2027. So Maeve and I got together, and Brandon and Jason and others, and we talked a little bit about if we were going to submit comments to the county, we would want to submit comments to say how could the project perform well, given its layout, given what's proposed, and given what the application stated was that there was an intention of a connection to the city facility. So That was how we arrived at what we put in the staff report. Certainly, we have no idea whether or not Bonner County is going to be interested in what we have to say or not. I did note after looking at this thing that I made reference to our comp plan designation for this area, and I was incorrect in the staff report. It's actually an area that's lower density in our comp plan than what I had mentioned in the staff report. Nonetheless, it's within the AI. It's something we can't comment on. It's a very low density area, but there are opportunities for potentially connecting a path. We have no idea if there ever is going to be a capital improvement project along Baldy in the county, but it's part of our multimodal plan in the city to the east. So we thought it stood to reason to encourage them to consider the idea that that path could be continued. It's something I think it's important just proactively on the record, trying to incorporate comments where we can about bike and ped connectivity. And as much as that is important, and it's something we want to encourage, and our comp plan certainly speaks to that, we picked up on the application itself. I read the application form that was submitted to the county. It says, oh, yeah, there's an intention to connect to the city. So we got together and thought, well, how could that best perform? If that were there, how would we want that connection to perform? Make it clear coming from the city property onto the private property that says private property. Have dog waste stations, for example, if people are going to walk their dogs. Some common sense things we thought were good food for thought. Should that level of detail, first of all, if the county were interested in including some of that level of detail could bear fruit possibly in discussions we could have with the property owner and or the county if they were interested. Perhaps providing that access for these residents of some form. So that was the genesis of our comments. That's what we put together, and I'm happy to talk about it with you. But really, we have no indication whether or not Bonner County is interested in hearing from us at all on this, other than the fact that they sent it to us as a courtesy.
I think a requirement, actually, because it's in our AI.
It is a requirement, but it's I think, well, I'm going to interpret that as a courtesy because they don't really have to do anything with it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you, Bill. Council members, any comments, discussion? You have options of discussing, passing forward recommendations as presented, adding recommendations. I think Bill pretty clearly summarized what we're doing here.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schreiber?
obviously I do have comments. Yeah, I love a lot of the stuff that you put in the staff report, and I appreciate all the work you put into it, even knowing that, possibly the county's not going to care at all. But, and there is some things that I really do love about this development. For example, the fact that the road stubs at the end of the property rather than ending in a cul-de-sac is really good. I think that there's a lot of dead-end roads around the county that, are going to cause problems for a lot of reasons. But if this neighboring property owner were to ever develop, they would be able to continue that road through. One thought I had on that same line is right at the corner of lots 9 and 10 right there. Just had it up.
Yeah.
Block 1, so bottom left of your screen there.
Yep. Right here.
Yeah, right there. So if you were to create a right-of-way easement right there, you would have the same potential for the property to the south for them to continue that road to the south or the west in the future. And if you look at the plat for Lula Court, we spoke about that earlier. They have done the same thing. If you look at the right-of-way dedication, it continues on past their cul-de-sac, but that right-of-way is there in case somebody in the future wants to develop to the north. You can continue Lula Court to the north. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be built out with city standard curb and gutter and sidewalk and all of that, but just creating just a right-of-way. You wouldn't even have to dedicate that much property, and it's right on the edge of, right on the corner of 2 lots. They wouldn't even notice the difference in their buildable square footage, really. So that was one comment I had. that potentially asking for right of way
Continue.
at that corner right there. Yeah.
Continuance.
And then I love the idea of asking for the dedication for some sort of pedestrian path. I think the people who live in this neighborhood will definitely want access to that city property there and along Baldy. That's a good idea. I do have a little bit of an issue creating a private and exclusive entrance to city property. If they are going to have access to that city property, I think, yeah, absolutely, it needs to be signed and all of the things that you recommended in your staff report. But it feels wrong that this neighborhood who doesn't pay city taxes and doesn't pay into the sewer district at all would have their own private entrance to that Baldy Foot property. And so I would just ask that if they are going to have their entrance, that it be on a public right-of-way that stubs up to the property line, so that if the city at a future date wanted to put some parking area over there, that would be a possibility, rather than it being a private HOA amenity afforded to just the residents of this neighborhood and not the general public, considering it as a public piece of property. And if it was ever sold and to be developed, again, you'd have that potential connectivity for the future.
Councilman Schreiber, is there a specific block or lot that you're saying that, are you saying maybe?
It's, I
lot
believe it's
13?
indicated as stormwater tract is where the application spoke of a access point into the city of Sandpoint property. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think those are the two asks that I have.
Councilman Schreiber, it would be appropriate for you to make a motion to amend the staff or add to the staff report to include those, and we could discuss and vote on that.
Sure. I might butcher this a little bit, but I move to amend the staff report to add conditions that there be a right-of-way dedicated at the corners of Lot 9 and Lot 10, Block 1.
Make that bigger again.
And a condition that
To provide for future connectivity to the south?
south and or west, yeah. And a condition that if there is an access point to the city of Sandpoint property to the east, that it be done on a public right-of-way that is stubbed to the city property.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion by Schreiber, second by Duquette. Discussion? I would just point out, Councilman Schreiber, that it appears that that road south of Lot 9 that we're looking at right there is, I guess it's not quite on the property line of no, it is on the property line of the adjacent Lot 10 to the south. Oh, stormwater track. I'm sorry. I gotcha. Never mind. I removed that comment.
So this was, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Go ahead, Councilwoman Duquette.
This was the question I had, so that stormwater, it says stormwater, open space stormwater tract, which fronts Syringa Creek. Is that what you're talking about, that line between 9 and 10? Is that where that path is being recommended? That's what I asked Brandon today, what actually that meant.
So there's a
This right
path
here.
crossing this stormwater tract
Right,
here, and the
right,
city of Sandpoint
right.
property is over here.
That's what I was wondering.
In addition to that being a public
Right.
right-of-way, I'm also asking for a right-of-way here
Right.
for the property owners to the south, if and when that ever gets developed. And again, just like has been done in the past with Lula Court, it doesn't need to be built out to city standards now, but just having that right-of-way in the future allows for future development.
And I was interested in that as a connection, and this is what I was asking too. You're not making any recommendations, Bill, for Baldy property to have a path. This is just for the Deerfield property. Because in the future, the 2016, that Bonner County Trails Plan shows that Taylor's Trail dropping from the southern part of Baldy, the Baldfoot property, connect somehow to, it looked like it was going to Great Northern. Is that where that proposed
I
was?
believe so.
And so opening that would allow, if that was a public right of way, that would allow that in the future to be built across, correct, and connect to that trail. There's that little piece of trail, Taylor's Trail. I wrote down what page it was on, but it's on that 2016 BC Trails Plan. Anyway, that's my question. My question was, this was just to propose for the Deerfield property to make that path, right? A recommendation, not to continue it at this point across Baldy.
That's my understanding.
Okay, well,
We're not,
it was your comments. It was,
we're not really talking
City
about
staff.
anything that would encumber the
Right.
Baldy property at this point.
but opening that as public right of way,
That's the motion.
To the property line.
right, would allow that in the future, correct?
Correct.
You create more possibility for it.
Of connection, yeah, that's what I was curious of.
Any other council discussion? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to,
Mr. Mayor, there's a motion on the table
oh,
with this.
I would call for a vote, which is a motion to amend the staff report with those 2 additional recommendations to Bonner County.
That we already did.
Is that,
Counselor Duquette?
Didn't I second that?
this is the vote.
Oh, okay, yes, yes.
Counselor Schreiber?
Yes.
Counselor Rule?
Yes.
Counselor Dick?
Yes.
Counselor Sprow?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, council members. Thank you, public. Thank you, staff, for staying a long night. With no
what I was
new business or further business on the agenda, this meeting is now adjourned at 9:01 PM.